And we're live. Okay. Hello everyone. Sorry for the delay. We were just waiting for everybody to get gathered together. Let me make this theater mode. I'm trying out a new, slightly different style today. That looks good, doesn't it? You can see breaking down patriarchy much easily, and I feel like there's much less wasted space. Let me just make this a little smaller, and perfect. Hello planet. Hello everybody else. Today we're continuing our review of Breaking Down Patriarchy. We finished the last video, which was about the fact that we needed a new female heroine's myth, and this is going to be about how patriarchy hijacks our mind. No, you don't need to watch part 1 first. Part 1 and part 2 are going to be like pretty much totally unrelated, though we might make the same critiques. We're kind of blind reacting here. Yeah. Do you guys have anything else to add?
No, I'm just ready to get into it. Ready to fucking launch off, to rocket into the discourse, you know?
Yeah. Oh, hold on. Let me turn you up a bit. Keep talking for a second.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah, I had Imran way down. Let's see.
Yeah,
Here
now
we
he's
Now you
like
gotta have me
normal.
right up.
Okay.
You gotta have me up like the New York Knicks. Shout out to the New York Knicks, NBA champions 2026. That's a big thing. That's a big thing.
Let's test you, August.
People are,
Hello?
yeah, get tested, August.
Okay. Hello, hello.
Talking.
Okay, you're pretty good. I shouldn't have to adjust you. You have the same mic as last time, in contrast to Imran. Who sounds terrible, by the way.
Really?
Yeah. You sound like you're in a toaster.
I mean, I have the same mic. Hold on.
You sound like
I think
you're
it's just the
in
fact that you don't have a mic.
Yeah. Especially when you're using your phone, just being a little bit further away from it as well, or like at a weird angle or whatever can make the sound really bad.
Are you doing something to adjust it? I think
Yeah.
he is. Okay. The microwave and microphone do have micro in them. Yes, which is a statement of the quality of the sound rather than the fact that they both release microwaves or something. Wait, why is microphone called microphone? Is it because of microwaves? I don't think it is. That would be dumb.
I don't know. Could it have been from like old phones where you'd like take the part off the wall to speak into it? That was like a microphone.
This merits
I
a
don't know.
Google. Why is microphone
Have you talked at all
called-
about what we're going over today?
Yes, I did. I explained it.
Nice.
You think nobody needs to watch part 1 before they watch part 2, right?
Correct. It's a completely different video.
Mm-hmm. Wait. Microphone translates
In fact,
a small
I would not
sound
even
which
say
is
part 2.
accurate. Yeah. Well, it's too late now.
It's a new beginning.
Yeah. A new beginning. A new breakdown of breaking down patriarchy. Yeah, the topics are sort of unrelated. Okay. Small sound is as accurate as the microphone deals with small audio signals. Oh, this is a Substack. What? That's great. Oh no, it just looks like... This person has like their own domain,
Hello?
but it's also via Substack. Hello?
Yeah, I'm gonna turn up my volume a little bit.
That sounds a little bit better.
Yeah, you sound much louder too.
Okay.
Maybe I turn you down a tiny bit.
Wait, you know what? I'm gonna turn off noise suppression. I'm gonna see what that does.
Oh boy. That's a wonderful idea.
Yeah. Hello? I don't think anything changed. Anything change?
Not really. Maybe if you
Okay.
will hear even more of like your slurps of coffee.
I don't have coffee today. Yeah, I'll just turn it back on. Fuck it. Okay, you know what? Let's get into it. Let's roll into this.
Right. Okay. Let me shut the music off.
Yeah, have your fucking
And-
Gran Turismo music.
Yes.
This is some real Gran Turismo 3 music.
I don't know what that is.
You don't know
It's a
Gran
racing
Turismo, the
game.
racing game, the PlayStation exclusive?
I know the movie about the game.
That's horrible.
I saw I saw like a quarter of the movie from the other room
Mm-hmm.
as someone in my family was watching it. It looked kind of ass, not gonna lie.
Yeah, I bet so. The premise is pretty silly. All right, let's hope that I don't get the loading problems
Who
this
are
video.
you? Really?
Oh, both of you are watching my screen sharing with you?
We are, yeah, we're, I
Okay.
mean,
Excellent.
Okay, I am now.
And where does your sense of who you are come from?
what a big question. What a big philosophical question.
I know.
In Pixar's
Also, that sequence was pretty great, right, guys? Only
feel stimulated.
only to lead into Inside Out 2.
I know. I felt like I was getting,
Inside Out.
I was being given like acid only to get fucking,
Inside Out 2.
yeah.
What a like crash back down to earth.
Too. We get to see inside the brain of a 13-year-old girl named Riley. We see an internal family system of personalities that make up Riley's emotions, and we see the complex core of who Riley is, her very sense of self. This sense of self is created by Riley's beliefs and memories, and the movie is a beautiful story about growing up and developing tools for positive mental health. One thing the movie doesn't mention, though, is that a lot of the input that forms a person's belief system, which in turn creates their sense of self, comes from people in power. People who make laws and rules and tell stories that tell all of us how to be safe and how to be a good person in the world. And in a patriarchal society, most of those people are men. So what is the impact on a girl and woman's self-concept if the sources of her very sense of self are the thoughts and opinions and beliefs of men? And once that male-created selfhood has been formed, is there any way to undo it? I started piano lessons when I was 4
pause real
years
quick.
old, and I was obsessed.
I see what she's going for. But like making it about men and not certain gender norms and their consequences at a structural level is a little bit strange. Like, so for example, if we were to like, I know it's like really bad form to flip this sort of a thing, but I think now like, I think we might have one allowance for it. If we were to flip this, and it were to be something like, me talking about my ideas of myself being formed by like a bunch of powerful women in my life, this wouldn't be weird at all. Presumably because we don't have right now any equivalent to something like a patriarchal system, but with women in power, right? Which would tell us that it's not really about the gender in the most immediate sense, but about precisely that structuration itself.
Imran, what about
And so-
primary school education, where not all the authority figures, but primarily the authority figures are women? We could say that people's like early lives and early thought is entirely shaped by women in that situation.
Bell Hooks actually
mean, we
talks about
could.
this quite a lot, and especially
Yeah.
in terms of like the mother in the home, things like that, where the
Mhm.
the mother is sort of the it can often be the person enforcing patriarchy at home most of the time, as in the sort of like nuclear family dynamic, quote unquote. The man is often away at work, right? The
Yeah.
reproductive labor is the quote unquote like woman's role, right?
And that's a sense
I
in
think that's
which
true.
patriarchy, or
Yeah.
like the reinforcement of patriarchy, isn't just about men being the ones in power.
Right. It's also the whole structure that enforces the gender roles that
I
put
think
men in power.
I think a good analogy here, because I agree with both of you, but I think a good analogy here is with something like the system of capital,
Yes.
where the issue with capital isn't simply the fact that there are like billionaires. Like lately, when it comes to political rhetoric, when it comes to people like Bernie and AOC and this kind of more left-leaning political rhetoric, what you tend to hear is we have a problem with billionaires, right? Billionaires are kind of the issue that we're dealing with, and these massive wealth disparities. And these are more, of course, consequences. It's not about uh, for example, an evil cadre of people that are single-handedly just dimming our ability to live. It's that they themselves are operating off of a given set of imperatives that if we were to replace all of them, would themselves remain and be facilitated by an entirely distinct group of people who uphold the same structural position, like an office, right? Like when we talk about like an office in government, like the office of the president. And this fundamental dissociation from the bodies concerned and their presentation is, I think, it's crucial for understanding this kind of stuff. Because for one thing, it gets you out of a Manichaean way of thinking about it, where you just have a good force and an evil force, and when you get rid of the evil people, then good prevails, which is entirely Christian and a little bit nonsensical when we think about actual life experience. Um, so it gets rid of the Manichaeism, and it also gets rid of the weird reductionism that ends up punishing people for just having certain bodies at a certain period in time, and also disallowing certain cross pollinations. So for viewers who are unaware, we watched this video before when we were deciding what we were going to react to over the course of like a couple videos, a couple streams, and Richard was like, "Well, hold on. What happens when, for example, you're, say, a young woman, and say, for example, you're really into philosophy. Really into philosophy, and you pick up a couple of philosophers, and say they happen to be men, but you really like what they're saying, and they feel very resonant for your own experience, and you don't necessarily uncritically accept what they're saying as a dogma, but they guide a lot of the way you think about things, which, for anyone who's studied philosophy, is a very common experience. Um, is there a problem here? Is there an issue by dint of there being a man helping inform the way in which you go about life? Probably most people would say no, that's probably a little bit far-fetched. And so already we have this point of we need to
Right,
look
the
at the
issues emerge
structuration.
at large, where it's like,
So,
oh, is it a problem that you listen to specific men? No. Is it even a problem that any individual person listens to men more or whatever, or has certain ideas about men and women? Not necessarily. It could be, but not necessarily. The problems emerge at large on the level of social stratification.
yeah, I think it is at the level of social stratification, and I hope going forward that will be more emphasized in the video.
Mhm. I also think that what's relevant here is that um, representation isn't necessarily going to solve these problems. It can be good for its own sake. Like, I think that it's good to have women in power for the sake of fairness, for example. But having women in power isn't going to um, prevent those same women from projecting patriarchy in their own way.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's
If
listen
anything,
to
you
her
could
life
argue that
story. Oh, sorry.
if anything, you could argue the vast majority of women who make it into power are ones who are able to conform to a certain set of patriarchal norms, right?
I heard
Yeah.
this about MTG, which is like she has to portray both masculinity in order to be seen as somebody who can be trusted in a position of power, which is why she is aggressive and why she works out But she also has to wear like the hyper feminine makeup in order to not be too masculine.
Right.
Yeah, I think that's a real thing. Absolutely. You know, there was a TikTok trend recently. Well, not that recently. It was maybe a couple years ago. I think it was mostly in the black community, and it involved like certain women, like usually older, like sitting in their cars and just going like, so who's gonna be the boys? I think that's how they put it. Like, who are gonna be the boys? And what they mean by that is, okay, quick thing in the black community. One of the problems that we're dealing with is that like there's a little bit of a conspiracy going, like theory thing going on, where about like the making effeminate of the black man. It's like a whole thing, and it gets back to like this notion of like buck breaking and this whole kind of thing.
Right.
And so everyone's always like super suspect about people who subvert gender norms within the black community, especially. And this was more or less an example of that, like a strain of that, led mostly by women who would just like opine about the fact that men are not being men enough. And it's like, yeah, that's how that's precisely how that can happen. It can happen from anywhere. It can come from anywhere.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean,
These
anyone
women,
who's been on a dating app knows it's obviously, I think it's difficult from any individual experience to say whether it's like a majority, a minority, a plurality, whatever it is. But a significant number of people would talk about how, men need to be men and chivalry and all these things that are deeply, deeply embedded in not even just gender roles writ large, but even like specific notions of male domination.
yeah, true, true,
This
true.
kind of
Because a lot of
reminds
those
me,
roles are
Enron,
fundamentally
also.
tied up with domination. Sorry?
The TikTok thing you were talking about, isn't it also black women who reinforce a particular type of patriarchy when with the fear of bisexual men or like DL men?
Yeah, okay, so that's a funny. Okay, yeah, not to tangent too much, but for whatever reason,
Yeah, we're already
Atlanta,
way
the
off
city of
topic with it.
Atlanta, it's seen as like the DL capital of the world. Okay, um, and so this is actually something you'll see. Um, God, so calling people DL has become basically like a homophobic slur at this point as well within the black community,
That's
somewhat.
funny because I've seen DL being used as a self-identifier on Grindr.
Yeah, it's kind of both. Like it depends on who's using it. So there are people on Grindr who yeah, absolutely are DL in the sense that they're clandestinely homosexual or like have like that kind of tendency in their sexuality. But you'll also have, say for example, if someone's salty about something, they might call you DL. If say for example you have like a bad engagement with a man as a woman and you're like not feeling so great about it, you might use that as a derogatory term. Other men oftentimes will call men DL if they want to be demeaning as well.
So it's
Yeah,
just
so
like
it's a whole
like
thing.
a new
It
version
comes,
of the F slur
yeah,
in some specific circles. I was not familiar with that. That's interesting.
it's a hydra. It's a hydra. It has multiple heads, but
Mhm. Okay. Shall we listen to Amy's life story now?
yeah, I'm ready.
Sure.
Obsessed with classical music throughout my childhood. In about 4th grade, my favorite composers were Mozart and Beethoven. And as I would set my piano books on the piano, I would greet the composer in my mind, bowing to him and asking him to be with me and to accept my offering as I tried to do justice to his work. I know this sounds so weird, but
I remember this from when we were pre-watching it. It's so scary.
I felt Mozart and Beethoven kind of hovering around me, sometimes very impressed with my playing, but at other times disappointed.
It's a very
Whenever
interesting to
I made a
relate
mistake,
to
I would
people in the past. I can't say I have had this experience.
Yeah. And this is, as she's gonna say later, because she used to be Mormon.
Right.
say sorry out loud to Beethoven. This is true. My other obsession as a child was religion. I was raised in a very devout religious family, and as you may have noticed from the piano story, I was the kind of kid who took things really seriously. I felt the presence of God the Father, Jesus Christ, and the Holy Ghost with me at all times. The founder of my religion taught that the members of the Trinity are literally men, as in males, not genderless spirits. And joining them in my head were biblical heroes like Moses and David and Paul, and Book of Mormon heroes like Nephi and Alma and Moroni. It is not an exaggeration to say that I felt these men with me all the time, helping me, judging me, taking notes on my behavior on some spiritual clipboard. I lived to please these men. Now, you may not have grown up in a religious family or playing classical music, so who were your heroes? Who was watching you from the posters on your wall? Were they sports icons, scientists, authors, government or political leaders, artists? Did these men inspire you? Did you try to be like them? Did you feel them watching over you? This brings me...
Pause it
I
real
can't
quick.
relate to this at all.
Yeah. Did you guys actually have like people you idolized growing up? Because I don't really relate.
Yeah, of course. Of course. I
Interesting.
actually think you two are are actually the odd ones out here. I feel like most people do, to be honest.
I think that's quite possible.
Yeah, I think
'Cause
so
I remember-
too. Because you like in school, you get asked about your role models and to like write a little essay where you meet your role model.
I remember being very, very little and having like King Arthurian knights and like Superman would be like the thing, but not actual people that were alive or were alive at any point as role models.
I still don't really
And
have
those-
I
people
think role model
that
is
I
a little
wanna
bit
be like.
yeah. I
Like,
think role
there's-
model is a little bit like. Sorry, go on.
But like, there's people that I'll enjoy and people that I derive pleasure from being around, or like that intellectually stimulate me, but they're not models for me. I don't want to be them.
Yeah. I didn't really. I feel this way about my parents ever either, as well.
Mm-hmm. Me neither.
That at least that I can remember. I mean, even when I thought of like mythical characters as role models, I was probably like 5 years old. It didn't really happen so much as I got older.
Mhm.
Just kind of doing my own thing.
Yeah, and to
You-
see
you
them
were- you were
watching
gonna say
over you
something on this?
also is very, very religious.
Yeah. The idea that you're being judged. All right.
Well, the
Mhm.
closest I get to this is when I'm reading philosophy. If I really like the philosophers, sometimes I'll like imagine them being like, "Yeah, you're reading me like shit, buddy." That's about.
That's awesome.
Because I want to get them right. I don't know. I do have models, but they're not more. It's hard to explain. I think I do have like a pantheon of men. I do. But I don't want to just emulate them in total, because one, that's literally impossible because they're multiple. And so I think I want something out of each of these guys, only to synthesize it in the same way that one produces a tapestry or makes a
I
quilt.
think, I don't know, is it different to idolize a person versus idolizing a feat of
character?
thought or
Oh.
a character trait? I don't know.
Yeah,
I would
that's
think of
fair.
those
I
as
think.
different.
I think it's
But I'm
definitely
not sure.
different.
Yeah.
Because
I think
character
it's
traits
different.
don't have feelings. And strange of thought don't have feelings. You don't feel them actually like becoming upset, and you don't empathize with them becoming upset if you do something wrong. It's more just like you know it in the abstract sense, and you're like, "Oh, I did something wrong." There isn't that added dimension of you disappointing somebody.
I think I have that. I think I have had that. I think I've had that with certain philosophical figures. No, I have. I have had something close to an idolatrous relationship, which made me a very good reader, by the way. But anyway.
Me to a related concept. It's called the male gaze. It was developed within the art world, and it's another way that men's projections affect women's sense of self. The male gaze was built on a concept proposed by existentialist philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre, who wrote in
Okay, pause real quick.
1943 that the...
Do you want to start with it here? Because I don't know where she's getting this idea that it comes from Sartre.
Yeah. So we did a little bit of detective work on this.
Yeah, we're
Because I
actually
was like,
planning next week to do a stream talking about this text. It's called what is it? Narrative pleasure and visual cinema, something like that.
Yes.
I think so.
Yeah. Well, that's
By,
the Mulvey.
by
We'll get to
Mulvey.
that. We'll get to that.
Yeah.
For now, we did
that's what
some
we wanted to say.
digging on this. So Jean-Paul Sartre, we're going to do a little bit of philosophy very quickly. Jean-Paul Sartre wrote a couple of very important texts. The most famous one probably is his Existentialism as a Humanism. But if you wanted the most kind of philosophical foregrounding for him, you would read a massive text that you can still find on basically in basically any Barnes and Noble, but I don't think anyone ever reads it. It's called Being in Nothingness, which is his attempt at integrating all sorts of previous philosophy, especially phenomenology, but coming at it with the question of considering nothingness alongside being as an important factor of our kind of experience in the world. But anyway, so he talks about the gaze in this text and the way in which the gaze objectifies. The problem, though, is that this discourse, there are two problems. One, that the way in which the male gaze gets brought up, which is in an essay by Laura Mulvey that August just mentioned, Visual Pleasures and Narrative Cinema, has nothing to do, it seems like, with the way in which Jean-Paul Sartre, using phenomenology, wishes to discuss the gaze. For the objectifying aspect...
TLDR on phenomenology, by the way, just for those unfamiliar.
Yeah. Sure. So phenomenology, which is more or less the big philosophy that's informing Jean-Paul Sartre when he writes Being in Nothingness, is a certain approach to sense data and objects and experience in the world for grounding knowledge. It's trying to deal with some old problems in the ability to know things in themselves by reconstituting what it means for something to be itself in the first place. And it's kind of it begins in Germany with a guy named Edmund Husserl, and he gets picked up by a very infamous philosopher a lot of people will be very aware of, named Martin Heidegger, around the 1920s and 1930s. So this discourse gets picked up by Jean-Paul Sartre because he actually goes to Germany to study under Husserl and comes back to France and writes this book. Now, what you have to understand about phenomenology is that it's one of those discourses where when it talks about perception, it wants to talk about things as objects for perception. One of the big tropes of phenomenology is that consciousness is always directed towards an object. In other words, one is always conscious of something. One is never conscious of...
Here object is meant sort of in the traditional philosophical sense of like a thing without action, right? When you're viewing something, you're taking an image of it that is static, not a subject of action.
Well, the thing, and so it gets tricky because right. Yes, and so the thing is that everything is an object in the more basic sense. Even subjects are objects. Even other subjects. In other words, even other people appear as objects for perception. There's almost a kind of like
from the point of view of perception. That is exactly what I was. From the point of view of perception.
Now, this is important because at this level, Jean-Paul Sartre is not saying anything about the way in which men relate to women in particular, or that the gaze is only objectifying on the part of men to women or anything like this. And in fact, if you read his section on the gaze, in Being in Nothingness, he points out that he determines that other people become kind of special objects. So he actually has a way of delineating the way in which the gaze objectifies people, as opposed to, say, for example, a desk or a lamp or a vacuum cleaner. And part of this is the realization that one becomes an object for the perception of the other, right? And so your ability to be perceived and in a sense transformed into an object for the other who is an object for oneself constitutes a special kind of relationship that cannot be maintained with other objects in the world. And so already we have a delineation or a kind of refinement of the thinking, wherein Sartre allows us to think about objectification in a way that's completely different from, say, for example, a feminist discourse about the removal of subjectivity. For Sartre, subjectivity produces a special objectivity, meaning that subjectivity is still included within his thinking, his thinking on the gaze. The gaze doesn't actually strip the subjectivity of a person so simply, by inherently speaking. And so why is all of this important? Because what's at stake with this discourse is that it's trying to posit Jean-Paul Sartre as the kind of genesis of a discourse wherein women are reduced to objects from a state of personhood. The problem, though, is that that's not really what happens in the text. And that's important because, well, for one thing, it's a little bit intellectually dishonest to present Jean-Paul Sartre this way, I think. And also because this person, I think, has a master's in some related field. So I feel like she should know this to a certain extent. Also, okay,
I'm
alongside
gonna
this.
check if she says her master's in her description. I'm pretty sure it was in the other one.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. She has a master's in
degree in Stanford
something.
in 2020.
And then I think
2020. Nice.
Yeah.
I think she's either in the process of or has a PhD as well.
She doesn't have a
One of the-
PhD.
She does not have one yet? Okay. I think she's talked about being in a PhD program.
Yes,
so.
she definitely has.
Does she say what it's for?
She
I
doesn't
forget.
say what
with
her
the-
master's
with
is
the
in.
degree.
Okay.
It's probably gender studies. She said what it was in the previous video. And that's
okay.
Yeah, I don't know if my memory is serving me correctly here.
Fair enough.
What I wanted to ask Imran is, do you think that in a similar way, Nietzsche is misused in Butler, or like in explaining Butler's philosophy? Because
No. Wait. What do you mean specifically?
like seeing like characterizing Nietzsche as the genesis of some of Butler's ideas.
No. Butler themselves does this. And is pretty
Mulvey
explicit about it.
doesn't?
Mulvey does not mention Sartre at all in the essay that I. Let me double check.
So that's the difference. It's not at all
Yeah,
clear that
Mulvey does not draw
significant.
on Sartre.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty
There we go.
significant.
They explicitly
So for the
draw
viewer,
mostly
you're gonna
Freud.
be introduced to Mulvey in a second here.
Ooh.
Yeah,
This video
yeah.
is gonna get to Laura Mulvey in that essay. Now, August had the opportunity to go over that essay some time ago, and when he went over it, he was able to let us know that Mulvey is more or less going off of psychoanalysis
Yes.
to inform her thinking on
Specifically,
this kind of cinema theory.
Freud very heavily, Lacan very heavily. I don't remember any mentions of any other thinkers.
Mm-hmm.
It was just Freud and Lacan.
Yeah. And, okay, and this is a little bit of a special thing to say, a little bit of a special note, but Jean-Paul Sartre is kind of not super into psychoanalysis. Now, there have been attempts to kind of produce an existentialist psychoanalysis by other thinkers, I think, and I think maybe there is some conversation about it in Being and Nothingness, from what I've seen so far. But he's not a big fan of the project, precisely because he kind of he doesn't really like the unconscious as such, as a
Right, the unconscious is a barrier to freedom.
Yeah, as a complex, and what that means is when we think about the unconscious, the way Freud defines it. Is that it can allow for what he calls unapprehended willing. So because unconscious processes often appear in conscious life, in my conscious existence where I am conscious of what I'm doing, for example, like when I'm trying to write something or say something to someone, the unconscious counter arrives as a kind of rupture in my ability to carry out a conscious intention. And so as a result, sorry? Yeah. And so as a result, excuse me, sorry, I was interrupted for for something. So as a result, Freud is able to delineate an entire sphere of mental life that is not conscious to the person whose life it is, whose mental life it is. I can be harboring a bunch of unconscious intentions that are unbeknownst by me until the moment in which they announce themselves, and may still be unbeknownst by me in terms of their causes until it's been worked out with a psychoanalyst. So what does that mean? That means that there is a latent content within my mental faculty, of which I am unaware and which I cannot bear responsibility for in the usual philosophical sense. Because oftentimes in philosophy, to bear responsibility means presupposes an ability to have some kind of special conscious awareness or knowledge of the thing that you're supposed to be responsible for. And in fact, it's not too different from how we think about these things legally, right? When we think about, whether someone was conscious of what they were doing when they committed some kind of act, right? For example. And so for Sartre, whose philosophy is more about taking responsibility and producing a philosophy of freedom based upon his entire account of consciousness, this entire edifice of an unconscious complex becomes tricky, becomes difficult. Freud and Sartre are kind of like oil and water at times, frankly. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see.
Okay.
What is chat asking? Any questions?
No.
If you have questions or something is underexplained, make sure to field your questions in chat so we can take a peek at them.
Yeah. Also, sorry for getting a little ahead of ourselves. We had a lot to say on this misuse of Sartre, but let's let Amy get into it.
Act of gazing at another human being creates a subjective power difference, which is felt by both the gazer and by the gazed upon, because the person being looked at is objectified, perceived as an object, not as a human being. Then, in 1972, art historian John Berger wrote a
Again. The problem is that it flips, right? The problem is that the person you're looking upon has eyeballs and awareness and can return the gaze. And this and Sartre is very explicit about this in the section on the gaze and being in nothingness. And in fact, this is a little bit of an extrapolation on my end, but oftentimes the anxiety we feel is as a result of our gazing upon something that can gaze back at us, right? I think this can be the basis of a lot of social anxiety. The acknowledgement of being perceived, which comes from an initial perception, which is our own in the first instance. And so the gaze is not simply producing a power difference, but acknowledging a reciprocal power in precisely what it is gazing upon. Now, this is important because I'm here talking about the reciprocation between people who are looking at each other. And the thing is, oftentimes, what's so sinister, and this is me just opining, excuse me, viewership, but what is so sinister about forms of representation in media, like in film, for example, is that this two-way relation, wherein we're on equal footing in the fact of you're an object for me and I'm an object for you, and I'm gazing on that which can gaze back at me, becomes ruptured. Because when the camera is deployed, it is only my gaze that is saved and imprinted and given out to an audience to consume, right? The gaze of the person being depicted is no longer able to be carried out of the context in which it occurs within their subjective perception. But my gaze, insofar as it operates, say, for example, a camera, outlasts me, right? And carries over from the camera over to a film and over to its distribution. In fact, Michel Foucault talks all about this in his preface to The Order of Things, when he talks about Velázquez's Las Meninas. That in fact, and he gives an example of a portraitist who's giving a portrait of someone, and this kind of the way in which they keep looking at each other and challenging each other with their looks, and this almost kind of antagonistic relationship.
Yeah. There's
Um,
tension
Looking at
within the
each other?
gaze in the art itself.
yeah,
The subject of the
but of
portrait
course,
and the viewer.
well, in the sense of the portrait, the tension will be between the portraitist and the subject of the portrait, right? The person
Oh,
is
okay.
being, yeah. And so, what Foucault points out is that only one of these terms of the relation is able to carry out their sight beyond themselves in the representation, right? It is only the portraitist who is able to preserve his end of things or their end of things and keep it in a portrait that they can then take and give to someone else, right? Only they're able to disembody their perception in that way. And so I would say that Mulvey is right to think about, you know, this rupture, which she'll think about in, her own terms. But I think she's looking at something that's really significant, which is in fact the end of a reciprocity of gazing and the power and the kind of lasting power imbalance that comes when only one party of this two-person relationship can externalize their perception and give it to others in that way. Um, but you see this, we're already doing something way different than just saying that, for example, me gazing upon you on a street is somehow a power imbalance. I mean, this is a little bit ridiculous.
Did anyone look into Berger?
No,
I don't have to. I
not
didn't
yet.
have to because I'm familiar with Berger already on this. So Berger, actually, this might be a good react for a different stream. Berger
Mm-hmm.
has a three-part series on art stuff, basically, and the first part, he releases for the BBC in the 1970s. And the first part was talking all about the gaze. Now, Berger is interesting in that he's not trying to talk about an encounter between, say, for example, a singular man and a singular woman, or a singular man and another singular man. This is more or less what Sartre is concerned with in his writing on the gaze and being in nothingness. For
Uh-huh.
Berger, it's a little bit different. And I think, sorry?
I said uh-huh.
Oh, okay, excuse me. For Berger, it's a little bit different. What Berger cares about is how from, say, for example, media depictions and from maybe just interpersonal experiences, women end up interiorizing a sense of how they look external to themselves. So, in other words, he gives a wonderful example of this, where he says, a woman at a funeral is at the same time. Oh, I just realized my phone is dying. Excuse me, I'll be right back.
I think you gave the funeral example in the last stream as well. Or maybe I'm confusing myself because I've heard it a couple times. I can explain it while you're doing that. The woman at the funeral is thinking about how she looks as she's crying. Um, and that's a representation of her, like, she has like an internalized representation of her externality in her mind. And that's
Yeah,
specific to
there's
the
always
woman.
the sort of presence of the other, presence of, in this case, the gaze. That's that's putting pressure, right, on the person that externalizes their own perception, their own experience, in a way.
Mm-hmm. And I think, yeah, I think Amy's gonna allow Berger to explain this because it's what's really the most relevant here. Yeah, I
Yeah,
want to let her. I want to let her do the Berger piece before we get too deep into him.
yeah, sounds good.
Book called Ways of Seeing, which showed how traditional Western art positioned women as subjects of male viewers' gazes, reinforcing a patriarchal power imbalance. He wrote, "Men look at women. Women watch themselves being looked at. This determines not only most relations between men and women, but also the relation of women to themselves. The surveyor of woman in herself is male. The surveyed is female. Thus, she turns herself into an object of vision, a sight." Then in
I'm curious if this refers to art or whether it refers to daily life.
Well, that's the thing. That's one of the issues with the application, and I was going to sort of get into this later, but the application that she's going to use this for
Mhm.
is a little bit fraught because all of this stuff comes from art criticism. Um, all of the discussion, the concept of the male gaze comes from art criticism. And so, even though it draws heavily on things like psychoanalysis, it's not necessarily a one-to-one application. Oh, Imran's phone died, and he said he'll be back soon. It's not necessarily a one-to-one application to psychology or experience. Although I think Berger has a little bit more of a psychological focus, where he talks about the interplay between art and the way that as was mentioned by Imran and yourself, that that
Like the
this
portraitist is
concept
a
of the gaze,
psychology.
yeah, that there's always this this sort of gazing that gets internalized from art. So but the Mulvey, it's interesting because the Mulvey she's taking from Lacan, who whose notion of subjectivity has to do with a somewhat similar notion, but it's not necessarily gendered in the same way for well, it's gendered in other ways for Lacan. But the mirror stage,
Mhm.
this idea of ego formation is the break between experience and representation, where as when the child I don't remember what the age range that he looks at, but I think it's like a couple months old child looks at itself in the mirror and is able to recognize that it is itself in the mirror, that that reflection is it. But it's not it in also another important way, which is it can't experience the thing in the mirror. It doesn't experience itself as a whole being until it looks at itself in the mirror, and then it has this externalized notion of it, where suddenly then there's ego, there's identity, right? There's a whole self versus just a sort of a confluence of forces and experience coming together.
Yeah. Oh, also, I saw a question in chat. Captain Jumpy asks, how do they make sure only men looked at the art? They didn't. I'm pretty sure if we rewind a tiny bit. Okay. Yeah, look, in this art, you can see the male is being depicted looking at the female. I'm pretty sure this is
Yes.
yeah. It's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
the
So
male
Mulvey talks about this,
like visitor to
and
the
there are
museum.
ways that she does this, I think, um, all right, and not super thoroughly philosophically. Where she talks about the identification between the
He was
male
doing a bit.
protagonists. Oh, okay. um, between the male protagonists and the camera, where she sort of talks about how there's a blending of the experience of the protagonist's desire for the female character, for example, and the camera's oogling of female characters.
Also, to what you were saying earlier, August, I've noticed a lot of video essayists extrapolating Mulvey's conclusions to daily life, and it feels a
Yes.
little strange. Like somebody could write an essay that it extrapolates the male gaze into daily life, and then they could cite that instead. But people don't do research properly, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and this was the issue I kind of had reading the paper, is that actually I think that the paper has a lot of theoretical issues in terms of the way that it utilizes psychoanalysis is not very thorough. It's the way, especially the way it understands Lacan, as I was just mentioning, like the notion of the mirror stage is all ego formation. The way it utilizes Lacan breaks down in several areas. I'm actually interested to go over that on stream at some point.
Yeah, that'll be.
Um,
It's currently scheduled for next Tuesday, I think.
Okay, next Tuesday,
Tuesday.
something like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
Yeah.
next Tuesday. Going over visual pleasure and narrative cinema.
Sounds good. Yeah, so it's just I think that there are several ways that it breaks down in terms of how it properly or how it improperly utilizes psychoanalysis. But oh gosh, I lost my train of thought.
Yeah, also, I don't think we want to talk about the Mulvey piece too much too early.
Yeah. Other than to point out the ways that she's maybe misusing it a bit. But you can go ahead with it.
Yes. Okay, let's see what Amy has to say. And hopefully Imran comes back soon.
1975, British feminist film theorist Laura Mulvey wrote an article called Visual Pleasure and Narrative Cinema, which demonstrates how the female form was often idealized and presented from a voyeuristic male perspective. This happens in all art forms, but interestingly in film, the male gaze has 3 different perspectives. The person behind the camera, who is almost always a man, the main characters interacting with women who are disproportionately men, and then whatever men are watching the movie. Again, the male gaze is a term that comes from the art world, and today we're talking about psychology. But unfortunately, as any girl or woman will tell you, the male gaze doesn't just happen in paintings and film. It happens in real life, starting at a very young age.
This is a weird point to make. The male gaze happens, so she's saying that, like, the people that gaze upon you or people's perspectives are masculine, but I don't know, it doesn't make sense because the male gaze is produced from, like, artists being male. And the intended audience being male. But there are no artists or intended audience in real life.
Yeah, it's specifically about, like, sort of the power imbalance isn't quite the right word, but the sort of the unequal way that bodies are treated in the production of art. I don't really think that you can simply say that like people experience that. And, like, I think if you wanted to say this about something like social media, you might have an interesting point, but you'd have to do a lot more work to build that out.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I remember the first time I wore mascara to school. A boy in my class who I knew had a crush on me told me I looked like a whore. I remember in college a guy...
This is also crazy.
Yeah. I mean, she did grow up Mormon, right?
Yeah.
I think she went to... Did she go to BYU? Something like that?
I don't know, but how old did she say she was? She was in, like, 4th grade? Like, what a potty mouth for a 4th grader.
True.
Hey, he's back.
Welcome back.
We can't hear you.
Back at the right time. Okay, I did want to say something.
Yeah?
So the weirdness that you were having about trying to use this very artistic concept in, like, a regular social situation is that I think there's a problem of disambiguation. Hold on, sorry. Am I still audible, by the way?
Yeah, you're good.
My phone is, like, it's like a ridiculous process. Anyway, I need a new phone, to be honest. Anyway, so I think there's a problem with disambiguation. And by that I mean the ability to disambiguate what we call a male gaze, quote unquote, and a regular just looking at something in immediate life. Now, again, insofar as we talk about a male gaze as an artistic concept, we're able to discuss a very concrete form of representation within an art form, and the consequences of that concrete representation as externalized into a device and filtered through other sorts of automata, I guess, you know. But the problem with your immediate subjective experience is that you just behold things, you just look at things, you just look at people. What makes this a male gaze instead of just a regular gaze. So, for example, um, if, say, for example, this guy were to say, "Hey, I don't think that makeup agrees with you." Is that a male gaze? Is that like a fashion gaze? Is that like a rich like a Tom Ford gaze, where he's just like a fashion designer type, and he's just
A
like
queer eye.
is it a queer eye? Right. So there's a lot of weird open-endedness happening here, which I think comes from the paucity or the lack of specificity about how exactly we're supposed to port this from something like narrative cinema to just when people look at you at a party, thought in their head.
What type of cinema is this fourth grader watching to have this conclusion? He's watching movies about whores.
Yo, when I was a kid, my dad would he would watch action films with me. And the thing about action films is that I think everyone's had this experience if you're like a cishet boy growing up, where the men around you would be totally cool with showing you gore and violence in films or whatever. Unless you're August. But they would be
Actually,
totally,
my dad
but they would
was okay with it, I think.
Oh, okay. But in my case at least, and I feel like in a lot of kids who grew up in my kind of situation, they were totally not okay with sex. They would
Right.
try to make
You
sure.
cut out. Wait, you said you just said they're not okay with sex, or
Yeah, with sexual themes.
okay.
So if you're 10, they don't mind showing you a guy getting his fucking head blasted off or whatever in a shootout. But if they knew that a woman was going to undress, they would tell you to cover your eyes, or they would do something else, right, to prevent you from seeing it. And so already there is that kind of weird imbalance about that kind of a thing.
Oh yeah, I think about this in the
okay,
art community as well.
Yeah.
In the art
True.
community,
And
there's this
all
weird
this
thing.
to say,
okay, sorry. Yeah, it's
all this to
it's
say that
unrelated.
maybe that kid was just growing up on a lot of action films. Maybe that's why he had a weird perception of women.
Mhm.
I barely knew walked up to me and pinched my belly and said, "Wow, you've gained weight." And I remember adults in my community, men and women, telling me throughout my entire childhood and teenage years that I needed to dress modestly because boys were imagining things about me, and it was my responsibility to keep myself and them pure.
And young women, please understand that if you dress immodestly,
Don't do Mormonism,
you are
kids.
magnifying this problem by becoming pornography to some of the men who see you.
I wish I had never allowed any of
That is an interesting way to put it, right? You are becoming pornography through people's imagination. That's interesting.
It's literally you're responsible for other people's thought crimes.
Mhm.
It's so many layers.
Yeah, no, I thought it was interesting because of the way that it augments the definition of media to include imagination.
Yeah.
of those boys and men access to my mind, but I didn't know it was happening. And even now, I often find myself battling the accumulated voices of men's judgments or women's voices perpetuating men's judgments.
Pause. Okay, wait a minute. Sorry, I have a
now
refinement.
she mentions
I gotta get on my soapbox. About this. I don't really like the rhetoric of the problem is that you're blaming women for how men think, because we actually do this. Actually, everyone does this. Everyone blames women for how men think. For example, if a woman were to walk completely naked down a city block or whatever, and it distracted a bunch of men, even the most progressive person you can think of would probably say okay, yeah, at that level it's kind of ridiculous. So there is a level in which we feel that it is justifiable to hold people to account for what other people might think based upon how they present themselves. So I don't think the problem is that this ever happens. It should be a question of when it is legitimate complaint to launch. And I think obviously a girl wearing spaghetti straps is not a legitimate time in which you can invoke this, right, in like a classroom or something like that. So I think that's really where it has to be launched. And I think sometimes when we say like absolutist claims, like it's never our responsibility for what people think, it's like, well, that you don't even believe that in
Yeah.
like the most absolute way. And I think there's a better way of thinking about it, which is that it's not always a legitimate claim. The better way would be that we do affect how people tend to think. We just do. That's what it means to be a human being. The question, though, is when is it legitimate to ask us to refrain from certain behaviors based upon just the simple fact of being a human being,
Mhm.
which is kind of what always morality is kind of always about. Finally, I feel like, yeah.
Yeah, that's an interesting point because how do we even start to do that? You'd have to have some sort of like a priori standard, I think. Like, how do we determine that it's not reasonable to be naked in the streets, for example?
Yeah, yeah. No, I mean that's just going to be these things. Look, I'm not a moralist, right? So these things are going to be up to subjective arbitration, and that's just how we are. That's just how it works. It seems like so. I can't improve upon that system,
Jurisprudence.
Richard.
Yeah.
You said jurisprudence?
Yeah, jurisprudence and social
Yeah.
arbitration.
Yeah. True.
Is that a text?
No, it's a
No.
concept, legal concept. You never heard of jurisprudence?
I've heard of it, but I forgot what it means. I was
Oh, you
also
never?
making
Yeah.
I was making a little joke. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, we've been really
Most
yapping.
You know,
We
actually,
can-
hold on,
we
part
this
can
of my
reminds
do
me.
more
psyche. It's like
or
Wait,
more.
Yeah.
one last thing. This reminds me.
Mhm.
One time last year, I was at a cafe and I was chatting up a girl who went to Georgetown,
Yeah.
and she was like, "This is a horrible maneuver by me," because she was kind of feeling me, right? She was so cute, but she was like, "Oh yeah, my dad is actually really into philosophy," and I was like, "Really?" She was like, "Yeah," and I was like, Plato kind of hated lawyers. I don't know. I was trying to be funny, but I think she got offended. Um, anyway, no, let's continue.
Because her dad was a lawyer?
No, because she was studying to be a lawyer. That's why she was
Oh.
going to Georgetown.
I see. Georgetown law. I'm wearing my Georgetown thing with spaghetti straps today, so I thought that was relevant.
Why do you have a George? Yeah, see, that's crazy. I
I
feel
think
like
it's funny.
you're betraying your own university with this.
I
Yeah,
also
I
think
am.
it's funny to have shirts. I have shirts from universities I've never even been to.
Yeah.
I have a
You
University
might
of
take that
British
up, honestly.
Columbia shirt, and I've never even been to Canada.
That's amazing. You've never been to Niagara Falls?
Nope.
I've
Everybody's
never been to Niagara
Niagara
Falls.
Falls. What?
No, I've never been there. Yeah, Richard. I've never been up there.
Wow.
But, I've been higher up though. I've been to have you been to the state of Massachusetts?
I've been to Boston.
Okay. Oh, interesting. I've been to Boston. I think that's the
You've
highest
been to the
north I
Science
went.
Museum?
No. No, I haven't.
Well, next time go to the Science Museum.
Oh, actually, wait. Do they have art? Do they have like art projects in there, or do they have like a botanical thing in there?
I don't know.
Hmm.
Last time I went
Okay.
was like 2016.
Okay. Let's enough chatting. Let's get back to the video.
True.
I'm performing even when I'm by myself. Maybe you've seen this phenomenon represented with a different metaphor. In Phoebe Waller-Bridge's brilliant show Fleabag, the main character keeps breaking the fourth wall to make commentary to an audience for whom she's somehow performing her life. She isn't living for herself. She's somehow living as a sort of persona, a mask that's telling a story about herself. When Andrew Scott's character notices her doing the little narration thing, he calls her out and says,
What was that?
What?
Where did you just go?
What?
You just went somewhere. There. Where'd you just go?
Nowhere.
He can tell that she's not solid and centered in her sense of self. Women, does that metaphor resonate? I'm guessing so, since most of the women I know who have watched Fleabag cry when they talk about it. Men, can you imagine how your self-concept might be different if the vast majority of your role models and people in power all throughout your life were women? Take a moment to imagine that alternate world. So now for some solutions. Several years ago, I noticed how much of my self-concept was derived from the messages of men and how loudly their voices are in my head and how much I've still been living my life as a performance, trying to please them. Lately, I've been making some really meaningful positive changes, and I have 3 pieces of advice. First, have compassion for yourself. If you notice yourself reverting to little girl mode around your dad, or if you find yourself being overly deferential to male professors or male bosses, or trying to prove that you're as smart or strong around your male friends, if you find yourself performing for the male gaze, remember that those habits developed because your brain has been trying to help you succeed and keep you safe in a male-dominated world. Say, "Thank you, brain, for trying to keep me safe." Second, have compassion for other women, especially the women in our lives, like our mothers and grandmothers. But I'm even talking about public figures who can be the most egregious puppets of patriarchy, pick-me girls and trad wives. I know that these women do a lot of harm, and as you can see, I am dedicating my life to challenging their ideas. But they're also real people. And like us, they've grown up swimming in patriarchal water, so it's no wonder that they've absorbed that water.
I like this
advice
actually.
is pretty inoffensive, yeah.
Yeah, I think
I
it's
like it.
it's actually a pretty brave thing to say. To ask people to have compassion for people that are like social pariahs at this point. Because
Yeah.
they're never going to be fully accepted by the patriarchy because they are women, but they're also not going to be accepted by feminists because they're patriarchal. To ask people to be kind to them is not necessarily to take their side, but it's like nobody wants to do that.
It's all they know, so it's important to prove their ideas wrong, but don't blame or denigrate other women. And third, replace the patriarchal sources of self with your own real self-regard. In the final scene
Okay, this is
of
the one I'm going to
Fleabag,
have an
Phoebe
issue with. What the fuck does that mean?
Wait, go back. Sorry, I am so sorry. Go back 10 seconds. Yeah.
I also
Replace the
missed
patriarchal
this.
sources of self with your own real self-regard. Oh, yeah.
Well-
Okay. Yeah,
Oh,
I know
yeah.
what August is going to do.
Yeah, me
go
too.
ahead.
Yeah, Ash Kitty knows.
own real self-regard. In the final scene of Fleabag, Phoebe Waller-Bridge decides to stop performing. She looks at the camera the way she always does when she's about to make a quip for the audience. But instead of vacating herself to please the viewer, she shakes her head no. She holds the statue of a woman's body made by her mother, and she says goodbye to the external gaze, walking away with a whole and integrated self.
Yeah, okay, pause it here. Funnily enough, the whole integrated self thing is getting back into the Jungian stuff we were talking about last time.
Ah.
But this idea that the alternative is reverting to some, I mean, just as we've been talking about with Latour and all this other stuff, the idea that choosing another option is reverting to the true, natural, like, there's a sense in which she's describing it as almost like this thing before politics, which completely betrays any of the psychoanalytic or philosophical or political traditions that some of this thought would supposedly have been formed in. The idea that you can simply form a new self outside of patriarchy, I don't think is anything any serious feminist scholar would endorse. Like, we come to our subjectivity through these systems. That's why they're so pernicious. If you could simply choose not to, they would not be so effective. I mean, even the idea of the separation of men and women is one produced under patriarchy, through patriarchy. You could argue it is the system of patriarchy, is the separation of men and women, as like the foundational piece. So I don't know what it would even mean to then like have an identity outside of patriarchy, but then have your identity be as a woman. It doesn't even, it doesn't make sense.
I want to double up on this. From the Jungian, well, actually, maybe I'll say something about Jung and then I'll say something about Nietzsche. Maybe we'll do that.
Nice.
To what August said. Yeah, there is a Jungian thing here. There's a Jungian thing here, and I think the Jungian thing, for those who missed it, was this notion of integration. What's being integrated, right? What the hell are we talking about? This like complete self. I think what's being integrated is, simply put, the feminine back into the masculine, and we know this because last stream that was all about also something Jungian by way of Dr. Maureen Murdoch, where there is this kind of femininity that was dropped, right? And so the heroine's journey is in a reclamation of a certain kind of femininity and a reintegration of that femininity in order to produce, in order to make the self whole once more. And I think that's more or less being laundered into this thing about wholeness and making oneself composite once more, etc. I think, of course, this is also a discourse of authenticity. That's the kind of philosophical kernel here. In other words, to be authentic is to stop performing. I mean, she quite literally says, Waller-Bridge's character ends the performance and leaves clutching her mother's sculpture. But what does that mean, right? What does that mean? Of course,
Right.
she means it in a sort of. Sorry, go on.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, like, she referenced earlier, what is it, Mulvey's visual pleasure and narrative cinema, who's at least ostensibly heavily reliant on Lacan. For Lacan, there isn't really identity without performance, without representation, all of these things. The introduction into the symbolic order is the symbolic breaking from the real. Like, you can't get away from this thing. To get away from it would basically be like either to totally break mentally or to at least meaningfully die as a subject.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. This is a good point because, well, it shows that, how the hell are you reading Mulvey and then you're later on doing a Jungian thing while also at the same time saying that the performance ends, that there's a lack of performance, and she just produces some kind of subjectivity with a complete alterity to determinative systems. It's strange. It is strange, and I think that's one of the, if there is a theme that we can touch on in this video, is that there's just been a bizarre abutting, a bizarre kind of bricolage of theories and frameworks that actually aren't so copacetic, that actually don't
They aren't
work well in the same room together.
to use it in words people will understand.
Yeah, bricolage. A bricolage just means like a massive collection of things. Oh, copacetic. To be copacetic, it just means to be like okay, passively accepting of something, more or less. And for example, bring in Sartre with something that's predicated on psychoanalysis. Ooh, it doesn't work very well. And then bring in Freud at the end. Oh, not Freud, excuse me. Bring in Jung at the end. And it's like, well, that might clash with all the Lacan and the psychoanalysis stuff. So there's just a lot of like mixing and matching and intermingling and not really checking to see how these things cohere very well. I mean,
and you end up with something that just ends up in a place of saying, just don't conform to patriarchy, whatever that means, whatever your representation of that is. It's not really actionable in any real sense, because all of our subjectivities are formed, like even our notion of outside of patriarchy. I think for here I'd reference someone like Butler. Our notions of outside of patriarchy are fundamentally formed through patriarchy. Like there's not really an outside that you can just simply appeal to, like naively.
Yeah, it's a reaction to patriarchy within patriarchy.
Right.
Ash Kitty is asking a question. Ash Kitty asks, let's see. Is there a self to be integrated? Why refer to a self as something to be integrated? I'm not entirely familiar with Jungian thought. Well, I think this comes back to the animus and the anima. That Jung is always going to have a framework where a lot of our issues comes from a certain kind of fractalizing that happens with social life. That being party to certain social dimorphisms results in a fragmenting of our traits and capacities and so on. And so a lot of his work, I think, is about. So, for example, this is an example of this. Freud will talk, not Freud, Jung will talk about shadow work. And this is also a discourse about integration. Your shadow just becomes more or less, it's carrying over a Freudian notion of the unconscious.
Yeah.
It's a bit more or less the kind of background stuff that is a result of the necessity of repression. And if you're a reader of Freudian psychoanalysis, you know that oftentimes repressed content can end up producing neuroses. Um, or in other words, a repression of the content can end up producing neuroses. And neuroses are clinical entities that psychoanalysis seeks to treat and deal with, so
Yeah,
that
this would be
someone can
like the
go back to.
classical notions of something like mental illness. Most kinds of mental illness would be like some kind of neurosis, right?
Yeah, precisely. Yeah, yeah. Um, and so already you have a framework of integration. Now, for Freudian psychoanalysis, to be very succinct about it, their whole thing is making the latent manifest. So you have this unconscious complex, the entire complex of an unconscious. When we talk about an unconscious in psychoanalysis, this entire complex is produced by the societal need to repress, the societal need to negate, to engage in self-abnegation, to negate certain drives, for example, that one might have in the
Yeah. So
world.
for Freud, it's similar to a lot of like conservative-ish ideas of things like law. It's this idea of a certain level of repression of innate drives that has to be done, similar to something like the idea of like a social contract, right?
Yeah,
Where there's
yeah,
this suppression of drives that is necessary for Freud to have a functional society.
yeah, precisely. And so, but the kind of end result of this is that this produces an unconscious complex. Now, most people are able to sublimate. In other words, able to redirect these drives away into certain societal constructs that allow them to more or less be a quote unquote functional human being. But when they're unable to do this, oftentimes this means that they end up producing a bunch of neuroses.
Yeah.
And
Sublimation here just means turning the drive into something that is more socially acceptable, basically.
more or less, yeah, it's a kind of transformation in that regard. And so when neuroticism is often the result of an inability to sublimate properly. Um, and at this point, the work of psychoanalysis is to then deal with that neuroticism. And the way it deals with it is by more or less making the latent content manifest. And all that means is that insofar as we have these unconscious drives that we are unable to successfully sublimate, they are considered latent content. And so
Yeah,
psychoanalysis
latent
believes
means it's sort of dormant or beneath the surface. So it's precisely the things that
beneath
yes,
conscious awareness,
precisely.
recognition, etc.
Yeah.
Um, and so the task of psychoanalysis and the task of which ends up being more or less a kind of talk therapy, um, is to make this conscious to the patient, make
Yeah,
this
to make the
aware.
patient
Yeah.
aware of. Yeah.
And so so this process of making the latent manifest within the patient and exposing what is unconscious to their consciousness, I think this is more or less what's at work with this notion of the integration of the shadow self that Jung talks about. So Jung will kind of frame it in this notion of integration, and the shadow being, I think, that complex of the unconscious that then has to be approached and dealt with by one's conscious awareness. And so I hope that answers your question a little bit, Ash Kitty, about where integration, I think, comes from in terms of its theoretical roots to psychoanalysis. And then this notion of fractalizing. Because, of course, with Freud, you already have a fractalizing between the conscious and unconscious mental life, unconscious and conscious psyches, right? But yeah, anyway, sorry. I hope that answers your question.
Years later that it fully hit me why I related to it so much. For me, it wasn't until 2025 that I fully realized that myself had always been crazily disproportionately formed by what men thought of me. God, my dad, maybe Santa Claus, and yes, Mozart and Beethoven, male teachers, male church leaders, teenage boys, even my husband, even just my male friends. And sometimes it's just a vague, amorphous male presence in my head. The great man in our heads that Gerda Lerner talks about. As I've been trying to break down this internalized patriarchy, it hasn't worked for me to tell myself, stop caring about what some dude thinks of you. I have to have something to replace it with. So here's a very real, specific example. Let's say I'm writing a paper, and I think of a really smart idea, and I notice myself performing for some man in my head, maybe a real person I know, or maybe just a nebulous male presence. I stop. I visualize that scene from Inside Out too. I imagine myself in the middle of a room, and I see that a male gaze is coming from a projector that's plugged in, shining those expectations and judgments at me. I walk over, and I unplug the projector. And while I'm at it, I look around to see if there are any other people's opinions projecting at me, and I unplug them all. Then I walk into the middle of the room, and I invite a few people into my internal family. Gerda Lerner says that we can replace the great man in our heads with the voices of our sisters and our feminist foremothers. And sometimes the family members I want in that sacred space are exactly them, my own sisters, my chosen.
But what if they're not fucking with you? Hold on, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What if you just like, I don't know, are they always in agreement with you? Wait, that's kind of wild. I'm not gonna lie. So is it the case that like anytime you feel like you might be challenged, you're just gonna unplug and then you're gonna plug it in? You're gonna plug in the stuff that like it makes you feel good. I don't understand. What does that mean? Am I crazy? Help me out, chat. Help me out, y'all.
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't really think that I mean, this entire idea is like the whole escaping the matrix, escaping ideology thing, right?
It has to be.
The idea that you can simply opt out of patriarchy, I guess, which, and like, it can sound liberating, but I think it's actually pretty deeply like reactionary. This idea that you can simply choose to not be a part of it. Like, well, what does that? Where does that leave us now? Are we simply saying that people? Sorry.
Ekstrom says not crazy sounds circular in a self-fulfilling / confirming way.
Yeah, you see what I mean? Because that's what I was like, hold on. Because she gave a scenario where she started, like, here's another one, right? Here's another one. She gave a scenario where she's like, I realize that I'm performing. Let's talk about the paper, right? She's writing the paper. She realizes some kind of projector thing in her head that's telling her, giving her certain messages or whatever. And she's like, well, now I'm performing. And she goes and she metaphorically unplugs the projector and then switches it to I guess, swaps televisions. I don't know. swaps projectors, puts in the projector of like Maya Angelou or something. I don't know. And it's like, are you not? So you're not performing anymore? Is that how that worked? You're only performing when it's like one gender. And like, and again, I'm just wondering, like, what happens if can you ever run afoul of these like foremothers that you're talking about? Right? Because like, I don't know, women are people, which means they often have disagreements about very crucial and sometimes trivial things like human beings do. And so it's like what are you actually putting in your in your head? What does that mean? I feel like it would be low-key kind of cooked if the only time if like replacing the men with the women in your head only meant like getting rid of criticism is what it almost sounds like to me, which would be super
Right,
like
and
I feel like
still,
almost like an
I don't
affront.
I don't understand why she's saying she's at simultaneously saying that she's turning off the projector, right? She's going beyond ideology, beyond patriarchy. But at the same time she's saying, "Oh, but I want these women to be looking over me and like repressing me." I don't really get that. It seems very unclear what to actually do with that.
Agreed. Yeah. 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 And it also
Sisters in the-
leaves. So I also
Sorry.
wonder too, because she hasn't addressed this, and I feel like a good faith interpretation would say that, of course, there are men who can be in the projector room, I guess, that she doesn't have a problem with, like I don't know, like Martin Luther King or something. Uh, but she hasn't specified that yet, and I feel like at this point in the video, I would like that to be specified. Not for like not because I just need her to have men in her life or whatever, but more so that like I would just to see like, is it really that dichotomous in terms of just gendered presence, or is it something more complex, right? Um, like is it possible for her to have a guy in her head that isn't horrible in this? If we're just picking up this entire framework, I don't know,
Well,
because
yeah,
at that
I mean,
point it's
that
like,
comes
what are
back to
we
my
also
question
saying?
is why do you need a guy in your head telling you what is and isn't good, even if that guy is a woman? I don't
Yeah,
get
it's
it.
true.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you know what? This connects up with the whole like the need for a myth. Or it's
Yes.
like, let's just take all these fundamentally paternal things and then also but then like flip the gender at the level of representation, right? At
Yeah.
the level of molar significance.
Form of
Yeah, I mean,
kind and loyal.
Oh, sorry.
you can play the video. I think that just gets back to my point of saying like the idea that you can simply opt out of patriarchy when I mean when we look at it, you're simply doing a similar thing just with an imaginary woman rather than an imaginary man.
Yeah,
And maybe that's better for you, like for her specifically, and that's
could
like
be.
good for her, but that's not really like an escape meaningfully.
Right, right. The Sanders 20 writes, is writing a paper not a performance at its core? I assume there's an audience it's directed at. Though I think what she might be getting at is training herself to think of women's opinions first and catering to them rather than to men. Yeah, I mean, to a certain extent, I don't mind that. Like, if your thing is like, before I, like, if you want to say that in like a general way, like if someone, so for example, right, if I were to have a conversation with like any given woman and she were to tell me something like, I try to, before I think about what men might think about XYZ, I think about what women might think about XYZ as it pertains to myself as a general statement, I'd be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. You know, I get what you mean by that. But I wouldn't then assume that like that it's like so dichotomous that it is like impossible for her to ever think about anything from a man ever, or have or take any man's advice, or have a man in her head in the same way that she has women in her head. I would not extrapolate that from, but it seems like that's what's happening here, and it's almost kind of it's bizarre. I don't know. Um, Like, okay, let's take me for example. Let's take me. I have, um, I mean, I can't say I have people in my head necessarily, but I have, I weigh the opinions of both men and women very seriously, depending upon if they have credibility in what they're talking about. And I don't really make a delineation based on gender unless it is concerning having an experience which pertains to that gender. So, for example, if we're at like an academic thing, um, if a woman is talking about her experience as a woman in the field, I'm going to be more interested in that than if a man is talking about the experience of women in the field, um, for example, or whatever. But like
Right.
anything beyond this, I feel like it gets a little bit like I don't see the point. Um, like if we're just talking about, for example, how to write a good essay, I don't give a fuck what your gender is. I'm sorry, unless we're talking about something very specific. But if we're just talking about like how to structure paragraphs, you know what I mean? Like I don't know how you would even work that in. Like if I read a book from a guy, if I read so I guess I'm a guy, so I'll flip it. If I read a book on grammar from a woman, and I thought about grammar rules and writing, I wouldn't stop and be like, let me see what a guy who wrote a grammar book thinks about it. Like, you know what I'm saying? I just know. I'd be like, I read a grammar book. It so happens to be written by a woman, but it's a good grammar book. Actually, I have a grammar book written by a woman. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and so I think that there's interesting parts in that because I
Yeah.
do think it's again the difference of individual versus systemic thinking, though, because you can talk about how maybe a system like grammar or even who's getting published is favoring people at large. Like maybe the opinions of people writing grammar books are being skewed by certain gender dynamics. That could absolutely be a thing. The question is like, how are you critically getting to the point where you're understanding how to deal with that versus just sort of, I guess, this like basic way of saying I'm like magically opting out. I don't know.
No, I see what you mean. Okay, so I have this eighth edition of Rules for Writers by Diana Hacker and Nancy Summers, two women, so I get double the brownie points. Um, and like, I see what you're saying. But let's say, for example, so like I'm a man, so let's say, for example, I have an advantage in academic publishing by dint of my gender, if I were to publish something academic. Um, so let's say I don't even have to think about that sort of a thing real quick. I wouldn't even like I just I don't know when it would come up to where I would say, for example, that in the revision of run-on sentences, I should make sure that I'm not performing for women unduly, or
Well,
like I just
I
feel
mean,
like
you could if you stretched it, you could get something there. Like I said, like, you'd have to go really far in. You'd have to be talking about like the way that certain sentence structures are like part of certain social class and things like that. Like you'd have to go pretty in deep on that. And in which case it would be like critical analysis. It would not be just man versus woman opinion, right?
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. You brought up a good point earlier, August, actually. And now I'm thinking about it, where you were like, but wouldn't you just end up performing for the woman that you swap in? And I think that's an interesting, because what you're pointing out is that this kind of subordinate relation doesn't go away when you just have this change at the level of like representative gender.
Right.
And I think that's true. And I think that's maybe at the heart of it, that you're still performing. You're just trying to change who you're performing for. Which, an argument can be made that might be of value to you, as you pointed out. But that's different than saying that you just stop the performance when you change who you're performing for. You definitionally aren't. In the same way that, for example, when I unfold a paper, I don't literally unfold the paper. I just fold it a different way. I just fold it back. I'm still folding, frankly, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it sort of comes back to the old Greek thing of like how you're placing the action, right? How you're centering action very much sets up how we're talking
Yeah,
about
yeah,
all this.
yeah, 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 yeah. And
The whole
and I
for those
think
unfamiliar, it's the whole idea of like the
mm,
scalpel dulling itself on the skin versus
mm,
the scalpel cutting the skin, or the skin dulling the scalpel. Like there's a different locus of action. Um
mhm.
and understanding how that might affect how we're talking about things. That no way of talking about it is like existentially more correct.
Yeah, I agree with that. But I think
Necessarily part of a certain kind of life.
I think question, or rather, I think embracing performance just helps us at the end. You know, I mean, coming back to the kind of Nietzschean, like, we're always engaging and we're always willing illusion, and that's fine. That's okay. We'll live. That's part of being a human being. And because the problem is, questions of authenticity are like the worst questions possible. Am I wrong
Right.
about this? I feel like they're the worst questions possible. All they do is make you anxious because you're always just like, wait, what am I real? Am I real? August, are you real? Am I real right now? Hold on. I got to touch my chair. No, but it's always that same problem where you're always trying to question when the performance ends and you'll never get a satisfying answer because the point is that you're always applying a criterion of judgment, which is not
Right.
entirely one's own.
Yeah. Yeah, precisely.
Women friends, and my feminist foremothers, Christine de Pizan, Mary Wollstonecraft, Bell Hooks.
Not the capitalization of bell hooks.
That was great.
It's funny that she mentions bell hooks because I think a lot of the things that she says. Well, I sometimes have trouble saying someone hasn't read someone because I do think people are bad at reading.
Okay, yeah.
Can I be honest with
agree.
you? I like that take. I like that take. Only when it's really obscene, I'll say it, right? Like Sunday loves doing that. Sunday likes being X and Y Z person didn't read so and so, and like I just like, Sunday, people can really suck at reading. I've seen some crazy extrapolations.
Yeah, I have a bit of beef with Sunday over this. I don't like assuming things too quickly.
Watch out, Sunday's gonna say the stream is AI if you keep talking bad about him.
True.
Yeah. Yesterday he told me that I have to defend everything he says. So he's gonna be like, yeah, this
was fact checked by true Sunday patriots.
Mm-hmm. He's gonna say, yeah, this is AI generated, Richard. Richard would never say this for real.
And it's also plagiarized.
Oh, yes, I guess. I'm plagiarizing who am I plagiarizing? King Critical.
But sometimes
there is a lot of AI in plagiarism, in all fairness. It's
yeah.
It can be difficult to ascertain.
There's a thin line between AI plagiarism and just being lazy or just being dumb.
True.
Myself performing for those women. Sometimes what I really need to really ground myself is the presence of just two people, the safest, most authentic people to rebuild my sense of self. The first is myself as a little girl. The second is myself as an old woman. I care what they think. I want them to be proud of me, and they are. Instead of pressure and expectations, I feel complete acceptance and love. They remind me that life is way too short to care what other people think. This mental exercise has been the most effective thing I've ever done to remove internalized patriarchy in myself and replace it with inner sovereignty. And think about it, in a way, internal patriarchy is the only form of patriarchy that we have control over anyway. This is essential to the work of breaking down patriarchy.
So this is again going to that language that I was taking issue with. This idea
is not
this idea that you have control over it again. It becomes this sort of thing that then suddenly there's sort of this standard of action by which people have control over their action and can simply opt out of something like patriarchy. And so patriarchy is no longer this sort of system that underlies everything, including our subjective consciousness and all these different social systems, as is laid out in later feminist writing.
No, she said.
But go ahead.
My girl here said inner. What is it? She said inner sovereignty. Fuck.
Yeah.
Hold on. That's not. No. You don't just. You can't just flip a mental switch and become a sovereign being. No. No. Okay. No. Not to get too Bataille about this, for those of you who are familiar. Anyway, we have a smart audience. People know who Georges Bataille is in this audience, roughly.
Yeah.
French philosopher, mid-century, crazy guy, kind of a pervert, like me. The thing is, he made a good point about sovereignty.
Careful there.
We'll interrogate that later. Don't worry. He made a good point about sovereignty, though, where he wanted to say that when you must be, right, and actually we'll go back even further than that. Before this, when you are put to use, when you work towards goals of which you are the means for that end, you are no longer in a sovereign relation. Why? Because you must exist for the end to be achieved. And therefore, you no longer have a deliberative capacity over your ability to be or not be, which you can take this to an ultimate extent. But this also just, say, for example, be or not be for this end to be achieved. And so we're always in situations, for example, by being workers or by having certain other sorts of societal entailments, we're always dealing with the situation of losing our sovereignty. And that's important because I think we engage in a lot of magical thinking. I got to be honest with y'all. I think we engage in a lot of magical thinking about our ability to live absent society while also living within society. It's in the same way that like some average guy will tell you, I don't care what people think, man. I don't care what people think. It's like, yeah, of course you fucking care what people think. Even if you don't care what I think about you, you care about what your boss thinks about you. You might care about what your kid thinks about you. You might care about what your fucking grandpa thinks about you. And all of these impose limitations upon your behavior in the world and the way in which you act and how you conduct yourself.
At minimum,
being a
you have
moral
to care
individual
about how
is a
certain
similar limitation.
institutions care
Yeah.
about you. Like, otherwise, I presume some of these people, like, legal repression is a thing. Like, conforming to social norms around how to behave in public is a thing. Even for people who are breaking those norms, there's not like some absolute break. There's a contextual break.
And so I know absolutely. And so it's like look, I think if you want to talk about like inner peace or inner sanctity or inner anything else, sure, but like inner sovereignty is a little bit silly. And why does this matter? Why am I not just nitpicking? Because this is another example of precisely what August is talking about. That at every stake within this discourse, there's this idea of basically exscribing yourself out of all of the ways in which institutions work upon us and all the ways in which we are dependent upon the same institutions that work upon us, right? In which we keep trying to break ourselves away from our entanglement with an entire world of things and dynamics. In a way that's just simply childish. It's kind of childish, okay? You can be the most rabid feminist you can be, and I will support you, and you can do it without having this idea that you can just walk yourself out by the application of some mental exercises from the ideological work of patriarchy and from the very material conclusions of, or let's say consequences of patriarchal existence. You don't have to be what's the word, naive about these things. You don't have to be naive about how you are in the world in order to be an effective feminist. I don't think, at least.
I agree. Especially when we're talking about such things like, supposedly this person has read Butler. But she's appealing to some sort of like essential femininity break thing that's going on when these authors don't have that. These like, at least the sort of the within like critical studies, they're not going to endorse something like this like break between either the inside and the outside of like your subjectivity or the inside and the outside of something like femininity or masculinity.
Agreed. Yeah.
Oh. Ash Kitty. This is a bit scummy of me to only respond at this point, but we do have a donation link. Let me grab it.
Oh, Ashley wants to drop donos. Oh, thank
Oh
you.
yeah.
Yeah.
You should put that in a pinned comment in chat.
Yeah.
While you're doing that, I'm going to see what people have been saying in chat.
Yeah, lots of Ash Kitty. Also, sorry if there's been any background noise. I've been hunting a spider. I caught it in my cup,
I was wondering what that
set it
was.
outside. Yeah.
Oh, I had a little book spider just now. That's funny. That's funny.
This one was big and it was striped, which I really don't like.
Striped? Yo, what's happening around here? My God. Terrifying. Let's see. Ash Kitty writes, we always live in society, regardless of whether you're a human in New York or a chimp in the Amazon or a camel in the Sahara. There are behaviors ingrained into us by others around us. Society is the great unifier. It is what links all sentient beings together. Yeah, I would agree with that, more or less, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you can talk about geographical breaks and all this stuff. But,
well, actually, you know what? Hold on. I'm gonna put a caveat here, and I'll say that I think society is not the great unifier. I think society is the great multiplicity, frankly. But that means that it is a multiplicity of relations, and that's really what we're getting at. Not necessarily that we're just particulars in some unified whole of representation, but that we are expanded out through all sorts of networks of relation and connection and subsistence that are predicative of how we are in the world. I'm starting to sound like Sunday. Okay. Yeah.
So you'll see the Stream Elements page. It links to my account, but I'm going to share all the revenue with Imran and August. The reason that we have this is to minimize the amount of percentage that PayPal is going to take from either all of us.
And then I'll finally go for sushi.
Yes, you'll earn $2.
Yeah.
The $2 you need for the sushi. Yes. Fund Imran's sushi trip, everyone.
Fund my sushi trip so Richard can give me an experience I'll never forget.
It's $6 per set of $6 sushi. So you can spend $6, $12, or $18 if you really are an obsora. Sorry, what? How do you say this in English? Somebody who eats a lot of food.
August should know. This is why we need Sure Shot. Sure Shot would know this.
Damn it. No Sure Shot.
A glutton?
Yeah, that could work. Yeah, if you really want to be a glutton, you get $18 worth of sushi. You get 18 makis. This is what
Richard,
this is what we need for Imran.
If we go, can I toss the sushi into your mouth? Can I pitch it to you?
You can try once or twice.
Okay. That works for me.
So until I figured out I can't spend my 5 pence, that's okay.
Let's ride out on this video, though. How much time do we have left?
Okay. We have a minute left, basically.
Okay, wonderful.
Yes.
Real. It has no physical properties.
Oh, I also haven't added the overlay that for Stream Elements. I need to do that.
It exists only in people's minds. And so if enough people unplug patriarchal projections, it vanishes.
Yeah, that was a really bad
conclusion. I don't think that's true. Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Please tell me in the comments what you've done to deconstruct patriarchy in your own mind. And as always, thank you for
if we all stop talking English, it vanishes.
Well,
that's what happened to Latin.
That's kind of true.
Well, it's true, but it's it ignores the complexity of the fact that these systems have an autonomy, and that's the difficulty, right?
Yeah, and that they emerge at large, that they're not something that, I mean, as we already talked about, your subjectivity is post-patriarchy.
Sanator says, "Wish the patriarchy away." Exactly. Wait, hold
Yeah,
on.
yeah. Pray the patriarchy away.
No,
Finally,
yeah,
we.
exactly.
Yeah.
Mein Gott, mein Gott. So, what are y'all thinking? Do we have another video to watch by this creator or someone else?
That's a good question.
Not except
We have that
the
terrible Nietzsche
biology
video,
one.
but that's real
Oh, yeah.
garbage.
We could spend a couple of minutes on that. Okay, hold on. Let me emulate.
Here, wait. Maybe we can have chat vote. Do we want like 10 minutes of yelling at slop, or is there something else we should look for?
I can go for some. I'm in a good mood. I'm feeling big in my britches. I can go for some.
Horatio tipped $50.
I do like this comment. We could get rid of patriarchy by replacing it with a new, worse system.
Yo, that's so Twitter coded.
Yeah.
That's a Twitter coded thing to say, but you're honestly true. Let's have a system of like neo servitude, where we have to work upside down. We have to like walk on our hands.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean,
our way
I
through
do
life.
think it there's lots of things that would be significantly better than patriarchy, but the idea that you can simply wish it away, obviously, is silly.
Ashkity says liberal feminism, man. I don't know. Yeah, honestly. You know, speaking of liberal feminism, I've been looking at a lot of liberal feminist texts lately.
Mm-hmm.
And by that I mean the Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath. No, I'm joking. There's a really interesting philosopher named Amia Srinivasan. She's a British philosopher. I think she's a professor at Cambridge. No, it might have been Oxford. But she released a book in like 2022, I think, called "The Right to Sex," where she kind of looks at stuff like
I would see why you would like the
entitlement.
book.
What do you say?
I said I would see why you would like that book.
Oh my, August.
What a pervert.
I'm gonna throw a baseball across this country. Anyway, no, it's called "The Right to Sex," and it's about incels. It's not just about incels, but it's about the ways in which people kind of have secret entitlements about sexual intercourse.
Yeah. I think I've actually
And
heard
furthermore, who can have it and who can in this whole thing. And it is going beyond just like male entitlement or whatever, but it is really interesting from what I've seen. So I've been reading some of that. There's another one which is very, I think, liberal feminist by a French recent French philosopher named Manon Garcia, spelled like Garcia. And I think it's called The Joy of Consent. And it's looking at, I actually don't know too much about it.
nice.
I just started looking at it. But it's just looking at structures of consent. It's actually pretty
Did
deep.
you just say consent is
There's
nice?
a lot of like,
Yeah.
No, but anyway, I feel like in like our spaces, everyone's always focused on like the most like anarcho, deconstructive, fucking like neo-Deleuzian way of doing feminism or whatever. And
unfortunately, there's actually not enough neo-Deleuzian feminists. There's the only one I know of off the top of my head. Well, there's Catherine Malibu.
Aaron, what's her name? Aaron something.
Oh, I don't know. There's Catherine Malibu and Malibu, and Sierra Kremen are the top two that I know off the top of my head. Both of them are pretty heavily they're influenced by Deleuze, but they're not like only Deleuzian either.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I think it's a pretty like, but I mean, by the time you're getting to D&G, that's very like insider baseball, But you think there'd be more, right? With the whole like becoming women thing that they have going on.
Well, there's the whole like, I mean, there's bad stuff on this topic. There's like cute accelerationism.
Oh yeah. No, you
like
don't fuck with cute act. You don't like cute act. You don't like the ooh philosophy. The Amy Ireland.
Oh yeah, that's her name. That's right.
Yeah.
Can't believe you pulled that. That's crazy.
No, I read a little bit of it. I had I have a PDF of it.
Really?
Of Cute Accelerationism. You know who would own that book? You know who would unironically own that book?
Whom?
Richard.
Yeah, I
That's
like cute
rude.
things.
I don't know. It's Richard coded. That's such a Richard book to own. I'm not gonna lie.
I don't really like
And he just says,
accelerationism though.
I know, but like you have to understand that even in the prose. Okay, so if you actually look at the text, it's all in like ooh language, and it's also like a hot pink. It's actually crazy.
Oh yeah,
You know,
somebody
you
would
should
buy
get
that
that book
for
for your
me.
partner. Your partner would low key. That would be a very funny gag gift to give them that to
Mhm.
give them that book.
Actually, I have a friend who really likes that type of humor. Fuck,
Is
mosquito.
you someone I know?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, let me Google the cover.
Captain Jumpy says the book has a hell of a cover. That book is a monstrosity. I hate looking at it, but it's really funny. Yeah, it's published by Urban Novels.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
awesome. This face looks like QB from Madoka Magica.
I tried to watch a little bit of Madoka Magica. This one chick put me on a Madoka Magica, and I couldn't finish it. And I felt really
Yeah.
bad because she would always try to reference it with me, and I'd be
Mhm.
like, "Yeah."
Madoka Magica is for lesbians. See, you can't watch it.
Is that why I didn't fuck with it? No, I mean, I kind of, I felt the spirit. There are moments where I was like, I kind of feel like a magical girl right now. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That was back when I was
You're not
really into
supposed to feel like a
architectural.
magical girl when you're watching
Wait,
Madoka Magica.
wait. Why not? What's
Because
wrong with
Yeah, why
you
saying
not?
don't
I'm a
want to be a
hero?
magical girl because you'll fucking die.
Okay, but like, hold on.
I haven't seen
But
it.
you're assuming that I have a regular view on existence. That's the problem.
This is true.
I think no, but when I watched it alongside her, I was really into like doing like architecture stuff, so I kept trying to do an architectural analysis of like the buildings in the show, and she got really annoyed. Um,
You know what we should watch? We should watch Madoka Magica Abridged.
it's not even that long, dog. Don't call me that much of an idiot. That's crazy. That's crazy. You want some schlock? Hold on. I feel like I have some.
It's like 10 minutes. Madoka Magica Abridged.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
Let me see if I occasionally throw stuff in a random playlist to look at later. I'll see if I have anything fun.
Wait, what if we
Ashkitty, I
react
think
to
we're
Sunday?
cutting out
Would that be
because...
too incestuous if we react to Sunday?
Yeah, I think it would be.
It'd be kind of funny.
Let's see.
We could react to old
Wait,
Sunday.
Actually,
I
hold
have
on.
some of his old videos on my hard drive.
Yo, August.
I have a video about cute accelerationism in my watch later, but I really don't want to talk about that.
No, that's garbage.
Mhm.
That's garbage. August. I accidentally found a channel, y'all. Wait, can you type this into your YouTube, Richard?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, it's called Soy, capital SOY. Sorry, just capital S, I should say. No spaces. Gnostic. You know how to spell Gnostic? GNO. Yeah, there we go.
Terrible
Sorry,
start.
I know you're not an idiot. It's like a weird theological term. And then space, and then philosophy.
Ugh.
I know. I'm already cringing. This is fire. Y'all are getting bonus content. This is crazy. Hold on. This is impromptu.
Yeah, we've only been streaming for 2
SpongeBob
hours.
philosophy. This guy's cooked. Oh my god.
What is this profile picture?
It looks like a surrealist object. What is that?
Oh, PhD
I think it's a
student.
stork.
He's just like me for real.
Liminal spaces, capitalism, and the philosophy of lost. Oh, this is because of that film that
Lost
just came out.
Dreams.
So okay, interesting. So
No,
this
it's
guy's a
3
PhD
weeks
student.
ago. Oh, he's explaining
That liminal space
Judith
video.
Butler's
We
gender
could watch
trouble.
the Butler one, explaining tradwives with Judith Butler's gender trouble.
Wait, Nietzsche on the overcoming of true thought. Why the fascists test the ruins. Yeah, we could. I mean, that one's only 13 minutes.
Yeah, let's do that. Captain Jumpy says you could watch me try to cram Nietzsche, Bergsing, and Latour into the Curse of
Every
Strahd.
movement
I'm
that claims
starting to DM tomorrow. Well, we can't go forward in time.
If we could, we'd be. I'd be doing.
Yeah, I'm
everything.
working on that, but the problem is the flux capacitor works with the college dorms at Georgetown University, so it's all filled with like hair and cum. So I have to clear it out. Yeah, let's continue.
I hate college students.
to restore an
I know.
origin is haunted
that's
by
crazy?
an awkward question.
Yeah, that's
like
crazy.
every college dorm, if you've ever been in like a college dorm and you want to take a shower, they have to like specify to you to like you can't jerk off in there because it's like a problem. Everyone does it, and then you just get clogged drain. College kids are wild, dog. I don't know. You can't have comments with college kids. You can't have things in common.
Mhm. It's bad. You have one person who doesn't know that you're supposed to flush the toilet after you take a dump, and it ruins everything for everyone.
Yeah, exactly.
We actually had to have a like floor meeting for this because people kept
How?
not
What?
flushing.
That's
And-
crazy.
And they were like, hey guys, when you go number 2, you have to hit the lever.
That's
By the way, I
horrible.
just want to affirm this because I've been in a specific building on the campus that at the uni Richard attends, and like the toilets actually have like a message, like they have a thing taped on them telling you to flush properly.
That's wild.
It's awesome.
Hold on. Somebody tagged me in general. Ash Kitty said, your audio isn't picking up on the stream. Maybe it's my end. Let me check. Okay. Well, I saw your chat. It's
Okay,
probably
cool.
because my laptop is laggy, and there's nothing I can do about it.
I'm looking at the video, and it looks like you are speaking. I guess, yeah. But then again, would the characters pick up that you're speaking if you're not coming through on stream?
That's a good question. There could be
As
several
long as
reasons. Yeah.
as long as Discord is picking it up, theoretically it should.
Mhm. Yeah. If Discord is picking it up, then my character will animate, and which means that I could have muted myself, but also nobody else is complaining about this other than Ash Kitty. Yeah.
That's because Ash Kitty is a real one.
Mhm. Everybody else is in their dorms doing a number 2, so it makes a difference to them.
True. All right, let's get going.
Where did the origin itself originate from? In the case of the tradwife phenomenon, the answer is almost too perfect. It starts as a comedy. While the archetype of the tradwife may be well known today and widely spread across social media, the concept first appeared in the 2010s on 4chan as a Wojak template, lingering in the abyss of boards like R9K and Pol for some time. And at some point, the meme was made manifest into reality and popularized, reappearing largely through influencers who perform the very roles first assigned to that Wojak. A theme that has persisted from its origins as meme through to its lived social media performance is the dichotomy it establishes itself with. The tradwife is set up as a type of traditional lifestyle, one that ostensibly expresses the natural calling of what it means to be a woman, always in contrast to the woman of modernity, who is presented by tradwives and their advocates solely in
let me
negative
translate.
and
Yes, we get live translation. Oh my god,
contrast to the woman of modernity.
this video is a great idea.
Wait.
интересуешься политикой, а просто перенимаешь
Have you ever done that?
политические взгляды своего парня. Oh.
I did this recently. I accidentally clicked on a video, and then I was like, wait, why is the voice AI? And then I looked closer, and because it was an actual guy talking, but it was actually just like a German guy talking about Hegel.
Oh yeah. It was auto-dubbed.
Yeah, it was auto-dubbed, but the thing is, not only had it auto-dubbed the speech, but it had auto-dubbed the title as well. So I didn't even realize I was clicking on a German video.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ash Kitty asks,
have it.
Yo, Richard, what do you think of Igor Lyatov and civil defense by chance? I think it's racist to assume that just because I'm Russian, I know every Russian thing ever.
Yo, chill! Oh my god. That's so funny.
Oh, okay. The
Richard,
translation
what do you know about Ivan
is
Turgenev?
Turgenev. I know. I don't think anything of him though.
Hmm. Yo, that was kind of sick. When the way you pronounce his name, that was authentic as fuck. I'm getting goosebumps. Anyway,
That's awesome.
so how? So okay, what are they saying? What are they? What does this mean? What's going on?
Okay, so this is a feminist, and she's saying, "Are you really not interested in politics, and you're just taking the political opinions of your boyfriend?" And she says, "Yes."
Wow, impressive. Okay,
Yes.
yeah, that's
I
interesting.
remember there being discourse around this at some point. I remember it also being incredibly cursed, but
Well, okay, if you want to have a conversation on this, if you want to talk about something that is a result
I'm
of
not
like
sure I do.
patriarchal misogyny, it's that oftentimes like women will just mirror the fuck out of like what their male partners think about things. Of course, like within certain traditionalist perspectives, it's more kind of like ritually enforced at the level of politics. Like it's more ritually enforced that you have the same political opinion as your husband. Um, but I will say that like even at a level that's just like very like normal about stupid shit. Oftentimes like cishet women are liable to just end up like mirroring whatever like affinities and proclivities and whatever fucking dispositions the guy has in the relationship. And this used to freak me out. This used to freak me out because I like when I had like a very brief romantic encounter with this one person, I was always like trying to make sure that that wasn't happening. Um, because she would just agree with me on so many things, and it almost felt like she never actually had a real objection about certain things. Um, And the one I'll never forget this, right? The one morning where I didn't even want to have an argument, but the one morning where we were actually at like crossroads about something, she like burst into tears, like she started like really crying, you know? And I was like mortified. I was like, oh my God, because I was like being very chill. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't say anything like untoward. So I was already like really alarmed that she even started crying in the first place. But obviously because I'm not like a horrible person, I was like, trying to de-escalate, like, hey, what's going on? Hey, we can just stop talking about it. I'm sorry. Like, try to explain to me again. Maybe I'll understand your position, kind of a thing, right? And what ended up happening was, I think it was just like the weight of like my lack of agreement was so horrible for her that she just like kind of like had a deep emotional response. And I think that's I don't know, I think that's also oftentimes a result of like a certain kind of subjectivity and the way it's produced within society. Uh that it could be seen as like scary or dangerous to be at like exceptional variance with um a very important man in your life.
yeah, I mean, a lot of people were punished by people in their family, especially women, for disobeying their father, disrespecting their father, um, all these kinds of things. It's not, I guess, that surprising, even though it's pretty horrifying.
Yeah.
Anyway,
He's crazy.
it's Sure Shot.
Ah, there's Sure Shot. Sure Shotino. How are you, my friend?
Sup, nerds?
Hi.
Not
You
much.
sound spirited. Okay.
We finished,
reacting to a
we finished
video.
our other video, and we're just chilling now, basically, figuring out what to watch.
Oh no, we're watching Explaining Tradwise with Judith Butler's Gender Trouble.
Oh yeah, that's right.
What
I just translated
conclusion?
this meme. Oh, we don't have a conclusion yet. We're 51 seconds into the video.
Oh, okay.
But it's going to be bad.
Oh.
This is by Soy Gnostic Philosophy, who's a PhD student.
Are they actually a Gnostic?
Good question.
We don't know anything.
Are they actually soy?
Are they actually philosophy?
I mean, is this a play on agnostic or Gnosticism? I don't know.
I don't know.
Hmm.
Let's find out, guys, shall we?
I guess we'll find out, yeah.
Who's presented by tradwives and their advocates solely in negative and prohibitive terms as someone who is unpure and fallen from their so-called original nature. To many onlookers such as myself, this reinscription of the tradwife in modern society raises many questions. First, how could a trend that began in the depths of overly online internet boards come to be seen as an authentic return to tradition in the first place? And if such a particular internet-based expression of gender was really as natural as they claim it to be, why do tradwives constantly feel the need to publicly perform and broadcast their lives on social media, a place that does not generally strike one as traditional or natural at all? I find Judith Butler's seminal book Gender Trouble and the theory of gender performativity they lay out there particularly insightful for understanding this phenomenon. And, as I will argue, oddly enough, tradwives inadvertently end up proving Judith Butler's contentions right in their incessantly repeated gendered performances. And they even end up creating what Butler might call an aesthetic of pastiche that subverts itself in its very performance of its origin. Before jumping ahead though, we must return to the origins of tradwifery that I noted earlier through an analysis of what Butler calls the prohibitions that produce identity. Butler theorizes that gender identity doesn't first exist inside.
The problem there is, do they know that they're doing pastiche? I think there's kind of like a to be subversive.
Also, that's not what performance really means.
Yeah, we're also going to get into that too. But like, in order for there to be a subversion, there kind of has to be like a sort of a nod and a wink wink, like, hey, we're doing this, but we know that it's like it looks kind of ridiculous or whatever. But these people are earnest, like they're sure they're not authentic in the sort of historical sense that this person is looking at it, but like these people are authentic in the sense that they are completely earnest.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, there has to be a distinction made on that ground. Yeah. On the question of performativity, I don't know if you want to tackle that first, August, or if you want me to say something about it. I don't know how, because we both were more or less have the same disagreement here.
Yeah, we can probably preempt this pretty hard.
I actually want to see how they build it out more.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. I'll give them a little space.
Us and then get expressed outwardly. Rather, it is assembled through a field of prohibitions that mark what counts as an authentic expression of gender in the first place. The ideal of a coherent and fixed gender is always maintained by a constitutive exclusion, an other against which the self becomes legible as normal, natural, and real. Butler writes that the disciplinary production of gender affects a false stabilization of gender in the interests of the heterosexual construction and regulation of sexuality within the reproductive domain. The reproductive domain is basically the normative picture in which sex and gendered relations are supposed to culminate in procreative couplehood. A man and a woman, organized as complementary roles with kinship, lineage, legitimacy, and family values that secure the social symbolic political order. Yet, for Butler, that disciplinary exclusion isn't always explicitly written into the law, nor does it always manifest as a limitation at all. Rather, it can be constructive since it draws a boundary line that makes a certain kind of subject possible. And it does so by casting rival possibilities into the category of the unthinkable, the shameful, the grotesque, the not me, in order to ensure the reliability of hegemonic gender categories within the reproductive domain. The tradwife phenomenon then can serve as a case study in this logic. From its earliest mimetic life to its influencer afterlife, the tradwife archetype is never simply a neutral description of what a woman is. It is a performance that constantly
requires people that think it is?
Silhouette.
Pause it real quick. The thing is that it blew up on social media because it was like this big statement. It wasn't ever a thing that people thought was neutral.
Right.
Like it was.
It's reactionary.
Yeah, it's a reactionary counterculture.
Yeah, I mean, even the people who are like, "Oh, I can be progressive and be a tradwife," know that they're not the norm, and that it's like there's like heavy political influence to what's going on in the dynamics. I don't know where that notion is coming from.
The memes are distracting me pretty hard. That's a bit much.
Your Zoomer brain is being attacked. You
Yeah.
can't focus.
Well, then there's even just the fact that like the way that like the various ways that they're performing it are not entirely constitutive of the past that they are idealizing, right? Like they're kind of like I can kind of see where they're getting at with the pastiche angle, because it's almost like they're overperforming in terms of what this supposed lifestyle used to be when it was actually normal and like actually normative and actually hegemonic. But I don't know where I was going with that, but
No, I mean, hold on. But I think it's good for the viewers to understand that when we see a lot of revitalizations of these dynamics under explicitly political grounds, because August kind of points out very well, this is no longer a kind of neutral. You don't just come into society acting this way. It is always a question of pastiche, and that pastiche must always then be over signified. You always have a kind of over signification happening, and I think that's
versus
why
tragedy and then as farce, right?
Oh yeah, precisely. And so I think that's why when you see, for example, like Andrew Tate, it looks like masculinity as a kind of farce. Heteromasculinity as a kind of farce. The over significations of it are so baroque that it seems theatrical. No, and and so I think that's something to keep in mind.
Well, I mean, like Don Draper would look at somebody like Andrew Tate like a freak, right?
Like a freak. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm reading chat.
Is it reading chat or reading cat? Can Grusha write things now? Let's go.
No.
Oh, okay.
She's so stupid. I wish she could write things.
The modern woman is polluted, fallen, promiscuous, careerist, even infertile. Her body imagined in trad discourses is porous. Her desires is undisciplined. All of these negative characterizations of this other culminate in the image of a modern woman outside of the hegemonic reproductive domain. And this explains why there are so many posts dedicated to comparing the two in terms of fertility and family. But even when no children are present in the frame, the aesthetic is still saturated with reproductive symbolism. The body is pure, sex being exclusively legitimated through marriage, domesticity as destiny, the couple as the basic unit of deeper meaning. The modern woman characterized as careerist, sexually autonomous, child-free, and promiscuous is then cast as the threat that must be expelled so that the trad wife can constitute herself as an authentic feminine subject. What looks like a return to essence is therefore structured like what Butler calls a gender border control. Femininity appears pure only by continuously repudiating.
Yeah, so far, it doesn't seem super problematic.
Yeah.
What femininity must not be. And this repudiation doesn't stay at the level of discursive opinion. It becomes a style and a ritual. Only through the performance of what Butler terms corporeal signification within the symbolic order of exclusion can tradwise produce the effect or the illusion of having an internal fixed gender in the first place. Butler writes that, according to the understanding of identification as an enacted fantasy or incorporation, it is clear that coherence is desired, wished for, idealized, and that this idealization is an effect of corporeal signification. In other words, acts, gestures, and desire produce the effect of an internal core or substance. This is where Butler's radical reversal comes into focus. We don't act the way we do because we have an inner gendered core. Rather, the repeated acting is what produces the feeling that there must be a core in the first place. Butler's making a move here similar to Karl Marx's description of ideology with the metaphor of the camera obscura, whereby the relation between cause and effect is distorted and reversed in the interest of power. Butler is claiming that it is only in and through the public ritual of signifying acts that we come to experience ourselves as gendered subjects at all. Yet many idealize this process when they claim that their actions are rooted in some essentially
I would point more to
nature
Nietzsche,
internal to
but
themselves
I don't
as
think
subjects.
Yeah, it could be just a matter of of what soy Gnostic specializes in.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think it's explicitly wrong, but like I said, I would probably point more towards Nietzsche here. And as Butler
It's
themselves
more,
does.
it's more found in the problem of representational thinking that gets attacked.
Right.
By
And the
people like
idea of
Nietzsche.
essence and appearance.
In the case of the trad wife and most hegemonic orders of gender, this internal gender will be rooted in or isomorphic with one's sex. So under an ideological veil, we reverse the order of production in believing that our acts express an internal gendered essence that we are born with. This process leads to the ideological concealment of gender's political and social production, which takes place on what Butler calls the surface of the body. The effect of what Butler calls an invisible
Whatever
hidden
sex
depth
ed film this
of
is
having
from
a
looks
gender
so
deep.
cursed.
I haven't been watching the screen. Oh no.
I should stop watching the screen. It's so distracting. But I can't.
Within you can become culturally convincing precisely because such an internal soul or essence cannot directly be shown or demonstrated. The body functions like a surface that points beyond itself to an interior which is further posited as the real cause of what you see on that surface. And that invisibility is part of its power. If the reality of gender is inside, it can always be demanded and policed without ever being fully proven. Yet once we learn to read the surface of bodies rather than analyzing their depths, we can identify particular aspects of the tradwife performance that might make this ritualistic and ideological practice effective as a means of political regulation.
Pause.
First.
So this is actually a pretty good thing. He's doing pretty well. I will say to be a stickler, because I think now we can approach him as a stickler because he's not an idiot. It's not necessarily reading the body as a surface as opposed to reading its depth. It's realizing that there is no distinction between the two, right? Realizing that in fact the body as a surface is precisely its depth. And that's the radical move. Because it's again, as y'all point out, it's more Nietzschean in that regard. Of getting away with something like invisible essences in the first instance, which it seems like soy Gnostic. Seems like soy. Sorry, no offense. It's in your name. It seems like soy understands this. So we have to then be careful about retaining these old elements of classical thinking in statements like reading the body as a surface, as opposed to reading the surface of the body, as opposed to analyzing its depth. It's in fact that there is no opposition. Though we must take an opposition to the opposition in the first instance. You see what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think here I would maybe point again to I would maybe point to like Twilight of the Idols, where Nietzsche talks about this very thing. Here, let me pull that up. This is not the copy I was thinking of, but this will work. Let's see.
Ash Kitty says that's nitpick. The vid seems fine. No, I mean I think the vid is fine. Yeah, no, it is a nitpick. It is a nitpick. But I'm saying that like you have to understand that like at this level of this person's a PhD student, so I feel that if you're a PhD student, you should be okay with nitpicks. I feel like you need to have There are times where a nitpick is completely valid, in my opinion.
So far, they
which
seem
also
like
shows that I think his work is good. Sorry.
Yeah, I said so far they seem like not garbage, which is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this idea
to us.
Oh, sorry. Okay, my bad, Ash Kitty.
So yeah, this idea of the distinction. So what Imran was talking about earlier was the idea of like essence and appearance, right? The idea of the surface and the depths. The form and phenomena, sort of. And so Nietzsche talks about it this way. The true world, attainable for the sage, the pious, the virtuous man. He lives in it. He is it. So this would be like classic Platonic thinking, where it's like the sage has this idea of transcending this realm, and attaining something higher, right?
The ascetic.
Yeah, precisely. But then this progresses through time. The true world, unattainable for now, but promised for the sage, the pious, the virtuous man. Quote, for the sinner who repents. So this is like the Christian development where suddenly, and you can see bits of this in Plato even, but suddenly it's now a reward for the pious man. It's no longer contained within the lived experience of like attaining the virtues. Instead, it's now something that's beyond normal existence. It's something like the rapture or heaven, something beyond.
It must be earned. It must be appealed to.
Yes, it's earned at the end of life. It's earned beyond life.
Yeah.
And then this progresses on to Kant. The true world, unattainable, indemonstrable, unpromisable, but the very thought of it, a consolation, an obligation, an imperative. So this is the idea that Kant critiques as he critiques pure reason, he's critiquing this idea of the thing in itself, right? This idea that we can get at things beyond experience. And yet, at the same time, Kant still thinks that we must sort of we must presuppose God to even have something like absolute thought and reason and these things, right? And so he's working in both directions, where it's suddenly it's completely unattainable, and yet it's still an imperative, right?
Yeah, Kant's trying to have it both ways in Nietzsche's mind. He's kind of like secularizing God in a way.
Yeah, he's secularizing God.
It's honestly a bit of a perversity thesis, to be honest with you.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And then next, the true world, unattainable at any rate, unattained, and being unattained, also unknown. Consequently, not consoling, redeeming, or obligating. How could something unknowable obligate us? So this is sort of the beginning of atheism, for Nietzsche. The idea that suddenly, okay, wait, if we can't actually meaningfully, as Kant's saying, if we can't meaningfully make positive statements about God, where does that leave us? How can we be obligated by God, as he seems to think we still would be, and by this sort of objective morality outside of us that we cannot ascertain except through positing it itself. Then number 5, the true world, an idea which no longer is good for anything, not even obligating, an idea which has become useless and superfluous. Consequently, a refuted idea. Let us abolish it. And then finally, number 6, the true world we have abolished. What world has remained? The apparent one, perhaps. But no, with the true world, we have also abolished the apparent one. This is what Imran is getting at. This abolition of essence and appearance as a dichotomy is precisely the recognition of a sort of an unseparated life process.
What does this have to do with trad wives?
Good question. Can you remember why we were on this one?
Rich, no. August was just extending on the philosophy of my interjection on this question of reading the body as a surface, vis-a-vis analyzing it as a depth.
Yes, that's right. Depth versus surface.
Mm-hmm.
Which is what this person was talking through here.
Oh yeah.
The authentic self versus mere appearance.
Well, no, not just that, because they're saying take the appearance, right? But that's actually not really correct either.
Because
at least for
you're destroying the dichotomy between appearance and true. Therefore, there's something else.
Yes.
Like the synthesis of the true and the apparent, or what is it replaced with?
Well, the point is to short circuit it, right?
Yeah. You can. This is when you say it's the synthesis, this is actually something I struggled with a bit in my reading as we tried to talk through. Like, it is sort of a dialectical thing that's being done, but I don't know if I don't know that it would necessarily be dialectic in the style of like Hegel. But this
No,
this
listen. The synthesis of the true and the apparent is literally just phenomenology. I got to be
is
honest with you.
literally just what?
It's literally just phenomenology.
That
Like
makes
that is the
sense.
phenomenological project.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's true. Yeah, just going from the notion of experience a priori.
Hmm. So does that make Butler's conception of gender phenomenological?
But no. I was just making a joke about what a synthesis of the true and the apparent would mean. I don't know if
Okay.
Nietzsche's conducting a
That was a
synthesis.
joke.
I would. Oh, okay. It's less. Okay, here's the thing, right? The problem with calling it a synthesis is that this is idiotic.
Yeah,
It's
it's
not a
not really.
synthesis because the thing you're dealing with was never actually bifurcate in the first place. This is just
Yes, the thing you're
great.
doing is undoing the bifurcation. It's not really a synthesis. A synthesis would imply that you're actually taking both terms as laid out and then going beyond them in some way. You're actually sort of going
you're not
in a way, in a weird way, you're going prior to them. Like I'm reminded here of the Deleuze talking about the stroll of the schizophrenic, talking about the schizophrenic being transported to a time before the split between man and nature. That's precisely sort of a similar thing where it's more of a creative undoing.
Oh, so Gnostic started in their channel in December?
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting.
The tradwife is characterized by modesty, as its aesthetics makes the body appear as a protected interior, covered clothing, purity rhetoric, essentially avoiding so-called indecent displays. This is gender border control in a very literal sense. Practices that tell you where the boundary is between proper inside and improper outside. If the tradwife dresses and acts properly according to this model, they are not usually complimented by trad communities for their style or fashion, but rather their interior qualities such as virtue and purity. Similarly, if one dresses or acts wrong, you will be critiqued according to interior qualities as well. You might be called corrupted, attention-seeking, or immodest. It is precisely because the interior is produced as an effect on the surface through performance that the surface itself must be policed as evidence or lack thereof of a true interiority. It becomes a circular proof. The proper surface provides the correct inside, and the supposed inside is then used to justify policing the surface. Like Plato's metaphysical hierarchy of model and copy, the subject can then be judged based on how well it corresponds to the model or ideal form that is assigned as essential to it. Without such ideological policing, the lack of a true internal essence could be exposed and made into something liberating. In that possibility, seeing gender as contingent rather than essential, without any substantial original, is exactly what this whole tradwife performance is paradoxically always at risk of revealing. And this is where Butler's discussion of parody and pastiche becomes unexpectedly relevant for thinking about the tradwife phenomenon.
What do you guys think of that claim that whatchamacallit, being a tradwife risks exposing the inessential nature of gender?
I think it's an interesting thesis. I'd have to think about it. I'm not sure.
I don't see any evidence
because it's a performance that's being undertaken in an environment where it's not it doesn't have its hegemonic power that it once had, can kind of create this juxtaposition, right? Where we start to find it ridiculous in a way that we probably might not have been able to previously.
Yeah, ridiculousness might be something. Although I will say,
I think it risks undermining itself. I'm not sure it risks undermining gender writ large. At least I'd
Yeah,
struggle
well,
with
here's what I was
Yeah,
gonna say. I think I
yeah,
agree with
that's
you
the
on
thing. Yeah.
I think I agree with you on that, August. And here's what I'm gonna say to that. Um, like think about the fact that everyone knows you have to basically coach women into being women, right? That you have to have this massaging process once one brings bodies into the world of gendering them, of sexing and gendering them. Shout out to Anne Foster Sterling, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean,
Um,
that was the whole video that we watched previously.
yeah, and so knowing that that's the case, it's like if that wasn't enough to kind of expose the inessential nature or the inessential aspect of it, the fact that it is inessential, let's say, then I don't think this is enough. Like if that's not enough, if the fact that we have to quite literally like produce a whole complex to do it, and we still don't realize, I mean, I don't know. I think August is right. I think it can only really abolish itself.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that's the other thing. I don't think it's that people don't realize. That's what makes it tricky. It's about social investment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, true. There's a really good quote that I think it might be from Sinclair Lewis, where it was something like oh goodness, I have to paraphrase it, but it's something about like uh it's impossible to sway a man from an opinion that he's being paid to hold or something like that, right?
Oh
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
heard that quote.
The salary depends on it. Yeah.
So it depends on it. Yeah, thank you. And it's like, yeah, it's at that level, right? Where it's like you have an investment, so it's like this is going to construct, which by the way would be the quote unquote Marxist way of going about it, right? That the
Oh yeah,
ideological component is the result of material circumstance in the usual sense
Deleuze is
Marx
a pretty
means.
Marxist dude.
Butler notes that gender identities taken up in pastiche styles can be part of hegemonic, misogynistic culture, and yet still become denaturalized through a shift in context, because the act of pastiche imitation can displace the meaning of the original, and end up imitating the myth of originality itself. Butler is not claiming here that every imitation is liberatory, but rather that imitation has the potential to put the supposed originality of internalized gender on display as a manufactured effect, whereby the original starts to look less like a natural source and more like a stage production that we keep performing by repeating it. The tradwife aesthetic often resembles a curated image of mid-century femininity, with aprons, domestic rituals, sweetness, submission rhetoric, and so on and so on. But precisely because this performance arrives out of its original historical setting, it can be read as uncanny. For many, and I would argue most onlookers, it doesn't feel like nature or tradition returning so much as it feels like a stylized reenactment that is comedic in essence. And that estrangement is important because, as Butler writes, within the staging of such bizarre performances, gender identity might be reconceived as a personal cultural history of received meanings, subject to a set of imitative practices which refer laterally to other imitations and which, jointly, construct the illusion of a primary interior gendered self or parody the mechanism of that construction. In other words, the 1950s housewife ideal does not function as a stable origin here. Rather, it shows up as one image in a relay of images, a copy of a copy, an inherited script that only ever points back to other scripts. And if one were forced to name a single literal point of origin for the emergence of the tradwife as a recognizable archetype in the cultural zeitgeist today, it would not be in the 1950s at all, but rather a 4chan meme. That fact alone is enough to short-circuit the trad mythology of returning to so-called natural gender roles. Within this cultural relay of images, the tradwife appears as a meme that becomes an influencer aesthetic that cites an imagined 1950s domestic ideal. Of course, even the meme isn't an absolute origin. It has its own genealogy, pointing back to older social histories of domestic ideology, gender panic, and religious moralism, so that any true origin dissolves into a chain the moment you try to pin it down. At this point, the question becomes, when does this repetition become funny, bizarre, or revealing in the pastiche way Butler described, rather than simply persuasive and reifying?
Okay, here we go.
Butler explicitly warns that parody by itself is not subversive, and that what makes imitation potentially disruptive versus ideological depends on a context and reception in which subversive confusions can be fostered. Within trad communities, tradwife content is typically received as sincere and normative, But outside of those communities, the exact same content can be received as a lifestyle cosplay staged and performed as such. And when that gap opens up, the performance has the potential to reveal the mechanism of illusion itself, that is, the way repeated acts manufacture the sense of an inner essence. Obviously, most tradwives are not consciously satirizing themselves or subverting roles like drag performers often do. But despite the tradwife performing as if she is drawing her femininity from an origin such as nature, religion, or tradition, the very untimely and bizarre stylization can disclose the performance, as an inherited reenactment of a historically contingent fantasy, reassembled out of various tropes and images. Even the title, Tradwife Influencer, strikes us as an oxymoron. But beyond that, it is clear to see the fact that they are clinging to an ideal that is antiquated and in crisis. And their very need to incessantly publicize their performance puts this problem on full display. That's why, for many viewers, the tradwife archetype doesn't read as proceeding naturally out of any origin at all. Rather, it reads as a copy that perpetually insists it is an original. And in doing so, the whole tradwife phenomena can inadvertently put the myth of originality on display and subvert itself in the very acts that establish it as an identity in the first place.
Liminal spaces, capitalism, and the philosophy of lost dreams. Okay.
Yo, I'm not
Fisher
gonna lie. Is this
and-
person? Yo, where are we ranking this person next to Cuck Philosophy?
I think he's probably around the same level here.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair.
Cuck Philosophy is decent.
Cuck Philosophy is okay, yeah.
Why the
That's
fuck
funny.
do you have a President Sunday Prime stream from a year ago in your recommended?
I don't know. It's so annoying.
Are we
Why
having
are
Kink and
we
Pride discourse again?
romanticizing lobotomy?
Nice. Hold on, wait 1 second. Kink belongs at Pride. Are we doing this again? Again? Are we gonna
Yes.
keep doing this?
She already has multiple videos on this, I think.
Hmm.
You
It's
don't
just the
understand. The
annual-
internet is an interminable discourse reproducing machine.
I woke up and went to the computer, and the
Chrysanthemum all the way
computer
down.
thing- Yeah.
Wake up! It's time for your mandatory Pride discourse.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Underrated, some nice stuff, good stuff. Subscribe.
Big think.
I want to see that liminal
Bro.
spaces video.
Yeah, I think we can
Curious.
look at it maybe
Yeah, we
next
can-
time.
Yeah, and we can give it a peek off stream to see, like, maybe if we think it's good, we can just say it's good in the channel.
Yeah.
And then we're not.
Have any of us seen the Backrooms movie?
No.
No.
I haven't.
I haven't yet either.
Maybe we will
I
have
guess-
Sunday call in. Because he keeps saying he's gonna call in frequently.
Who is?
I guess I'm gonna have to go watch it.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. I don't really understand the discussion.
You're too young. The
Yeah,
subjectivity
definitely.
of it predates yours.
That's what I heard from last time Sundays talked about it. It's a very like 90s thing.
If I could put it to you, like, imagine you're like a toddler in like the 90s, early 90s, probably.
Weird start, but okay.
And your mom is like dragging you around everywhere, and she's like taking you to like appointments to like strange office buildings that you've never been in before. And you know, she goes off to her appointment, you know, it's like she's meeting with a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. And she just disappears, and you're just left alone, like in the lobby of this weird office building. And there's these, what seem to you, to your toddler sense, your toddler spatial sense, is just like an interminable series of hallways and rooms that don't seem to have any for being there, and then it's inscrutable why they're there or what's in them or what it's all for. And that eerie feeling, because the place, the environment that you're used to being in is basically at home, where literally every room has a special purpose, and it's fully mapped out and it's legible. And this is a space that is completely illegible to you.
Yeah, no,
And
okay.
that's
So I don't know why, but I understand this. I was born in 2001. I think I might have had an experience like this at some point in my life because I definitely understand like that liminal aspect of the back rooms. Um, to be honest with you. Also because I think also because I think I've grown up in places where like there still existed strip malls um that were like sold out and like abandoned and like I think it's also a little bit of a geographical thing. Like if you're in middle America, there are a lot of there are a lot of places that aren't a thing anymore. And you can look inside and see the spaces are just like have that same illegibility to themselves. And that same weirdness. Like I don't know if you've ever been in parts of the plaza where all the businesses shut down, but it's freaky as
Oh
fuck
yeah,
in like the same.
it's spooky.
Yeah.
But also part of me kind of like I want to explore the closed areas because I know there's nobody there, and if I got in, there wouldn't be any consequence. It's interesting.
I feel like I don't expect these comments from you. I feel like I always expect you to be a do-good and willful. And you say things like this. Surprise.
You're a little garbled, by the way, right
Yeah,
now.
I didn't understand that.
Sorry. I got it. No, anyway, actually, for people who are interested, I highly recommend a book called. It's a work of anthropology by anthropologist Marc Auger. Um, last name spelled first name spelled Marc, last name spelled Auge with an accent over the e. He's French. I highly recommend Marc Auger because he writes a book called I think it's literally just called Non-Places. An anthropology of supermodernity, I think, is the subtitle. Um, and so he talks about it's not exactly backrooms per se, but it's backrooms adjacent.
like malls and casinos mainly, right?
Um, in a sense, yeah. But also even more to the point, like airports
Mm.
and like train stations, like places where there's not supposed to be any kind of historical
Permanent
or like
existence.
traditional significance. Yeah. Places that you pass through, places that are just supposed to facilitate, places that are not supposed to embed within themselves any kind of historical thing or cultural thing whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think I might also recommend the junk space. There's this architect, very famous architect named Koolhaas, who wrote a really good essay called Junk Space. I tried to get Richard to read it, and Richard started reading
Yeah,
it, but Richard didn't finish.
I didn't
I think
finish.
Richard thought it was filled with nonsense, but it was a very kind of rhetorical, very a lot of like flourish to the essay. But he was attempting to give a kind of almost like poetic description of contemporary architecture, which for him he calls it junk space because contemporary architecture for Koolhaas is less. It's not the architecture of any particular period in time, but the agglomeration. In other words, the accumulation of the entire history of architecture. So it becomes a case that you see it's almost like you can kind of think of it as like a museum. How a museum, in a sense, encompasses history within itself, but by doing so, is
But it's
taken a
encased in
historic.
like a modern facade
Yeah.
in a weird way, yeah.
And so
I
the
would
air.
say like a place like Dubai is probably like the par excellence example of this.
This is junk space.
I think so. What do you say?
This is junk space.
Yeah, this is a junk
The
space
facade.
essay.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, Dubai is a good example. Dubai is a good example because that whole thing is built up. Dubai tried to realize utopia architecturally. It's very strange. Um, there isn't. You're right. There isn't this kind of accumulated cultural history. The whole thing has just been built up over the last like 50 years, for the purposes of
Mm-hmm.
an intensive imaginary, what's the word I want to use? A fugue, a kind of architectural fugue state that's overcome the
Mm-hmm.
entire landscape.
Copies without originals.
Precisely. I think I actually used to write a bit of fiction on Dubai. I had a guy. I wrote a piece of fiction about a guy who was I think like an investment banker, but who I think his office was on the 147th floor of the Burj Khalifa. And I tried to like write out the kind of bizarre mental health that this guy would have. And he drove like a silver Aston Martin, which he had this like dream of putting in his office and having sex in it while revving the engine with it in park in front of the window, like crazy shit like this. I was reading a lot of J.G. Ballard, and a lot of J.G. Ballard is all about this. His novels are all about like um, crazy mental life taking to excess. Um, and I did that because I think Dubai is the kind of place that fosters these sort of bizarre mentalities. I think the entire thing of Dubai is just a crazy pathological um, kind of chemical reaction. Um, I mean, even thinking about the landscape, the way in which you have all these super modern, hyper capitalistic, ahistorical structures kind of abutting its own a desert,
Built on
a fucking
built on
desert.
like artificial islands.
Yeah, and they're building. Yeah, exactly, on artificial islands as well. Yeah, yeah, and I think the fact that it's on a desert almost mirrors the weird ahistoricity of Dubai, because the desert is also a kind of a. It's difficult to mark a desert. It's difficult to terraform a desert. It's difficult to give historical
There's no marks
markers
left
to a
behind.
desert.
Yeah.
Yeah, to leave marks behind.
I created a fictional city like this in America for the graphic novel that I put on hold. It's called New Atlantic City, and it's in the ocean.
In a way, it's almost like it mirrors the corruption of the indigenous culture of Dune.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. Actually, I had a really cool thing once. Like, I had a really cool assignment for myself when I was doing because when you write fiction, you have to, if you want to write good fiction about a place, you have to do some studying. You have to do your research. So I was looking up like the public, like if they like what the school system looked like in Dubai, which is like a crazy thought. You know what I mean? Like,
Uh-huh.
Yeah. There
such a
people
domestic.
kids who grow up there and go to school there. Yeah. It's insane.
Yeah, it's insane to think about. Like, this is the
Riding the
same place where you're
elevator
getting like
for hundreds of floors.
yeah, exactly. When you have geometry on floor 170,
Walking through a
and
mega
then
mall on your way to second grade. Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Walking past the Ferrari that's on display in the lobby or something.
And then only to look left and see a bus full of basically indentured workers being driven. Not even indentured, just captured. Not even indentured, just captured workers from their home countries being driven around to go build another football stadium. Um, the whole thing is unbelievable. And so I don't know. I just the idea of like what is the kind of domestic thing there? Actually, one of the highlights of my life last year was that I had a tube of toothpaste from a UAE based toothpaste brand. That was crazy. It was like red, and it was like tasted terrible. It was a horrible taste, and it felt like I was in Dubai whenever I brushed my teeth. But it was a great, I don't know, social experiment.
Uh-huh.
Um,
Have you been to Dubai?
no, I haven't. I haven't had the opportunity. I've only been out of the country to go to the African continent. Um, which is a really fun experience. Have you left the country, Richard? I feel like you have. Yeah, you have. You've been in Russia
Yeah, in Germany.
and Germany. Oh,
And
you went to
Prague.
Germany? Aww.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I went twice.
that's enjoyable. Wait, was it after you met your partner?
Mhm.
Oh, that's so adorable. I love that for you. But no, but I'd like to go. Well, I'd like to go to Dubai because I'd like to do some like personal investigative journalism. I can write a really good article about it. But I wouldn't want to stay for obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah, it seems like an interesting place to like poke around in, but you would absolutely never want to dwell there. Like you wouldn't want to live there at all.
No.
It sounds like a nightmare.
I feel that way
God, can you
about a lot
imagine
of
the kind of guy
places.
what that does to your psyche? When I think about a guy who's like lived in Dubai for like more than 5 years, I think about like some ex like Kremlin agent who like made money on like shady investments, and now he's like, you know what I mean? Like he like the kind of guy who walks around with like a robe on, like just a robe and his like a trouser, his boxers, and he has
Some
like a
Gold
bear
Go
claw
guy.
tattoo on
13
his
ass
chest.
person.
I know a guy who went to work in Dubai. He was a former marketer for Pepsi.
What was it like for him? Do you know?
I don't. He's a friend of my father, so I don't know him that well. But I know he was being paid very well by a longevity company to be a marketer for longevity.
For Pepsi?
You know, I think for Pepsi, yeah, Pepsi
No,
longevity. You
it
think?
wasn't. It was after the Pepsi.
Oh, okay.
Well, you
Okay.
see, if you just immerse yourself in Pepsi, you'll preserve your
I mean, you know what? You know
body.
what? If Pepsi lowers your stress levels, low key, yeah, stress is really what gets people. I remember there was like this one dude who was like
That's
114
true.
years old, and they interviewed him, and they were like, you know, what kept you alive for so long? And he was like, I go to church and I eat my ice cream and I smoke my cigarette, and I'm happy.
Yeah, I got to work on stress.
Me too.
My stress is
Got
always
to work on
mental.
stress.
That
Yeah.
reminds me of a moment that Christopher Hitchens was on Bill Maher, and he was saying something like, well, you know, this is or Bill Maher was like remarking on the fact that he was drinking like straight whiskey from his cup, you know, like everybody else drinks water, but he just has like this glass of whiskey in front of him, and he's like, well, you know, it's good for you, it gets the fuzz out or something like that, some bullshit like health claim or whatever. And then Bill Maher is like, no, all that means is that you just take a drink every once in a while, it calms you down so that you don't have a fucking heart attack, and that's why it helps you keep you alive or something like that, even though it's technically poison.
Yeah. These things have you got to think about the nootropic effects, as they say, about whiskey. Um, we used to have a running joke, my old friend and I, that the reason why philosophy isn't as bombastic as it used to be is because everyone stopped smoking. And so they don't have the nootropic effects of cigarettes anymore to help them cook interesting philosophy
Or drinking as much.
or drinking as much.
Everybody used
Yeah.
to
Or
drink
talking
so
to each
much.
other as much.
Yeah. Or having enough sex. Yeah. Everything
Yeah.
reduced.
They're just on 4chan or whatever.
Yeah. And then they have
We
like
live-
channel names
yeah.
like soy Gnostic philosophy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's all incorporeal now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Well, what are we up to now? What's going on?
I'm getting pretty tired. I'm good to call it here if you guys are good.
I'm gonna call it here.
Yeah.
Thanks everyone for sticking with us.
Yeah, thank you all for
It's been a
joining
real
us.
pleasure. I hope we haven't been too annoying, and I hope you learned something. More importantly, if you want to find us, all of us, we are all mods on the GSL server attached to the channel. And you can also find President Sunday there, and you can annoy him and bug him and do whatever you want to do.
Mhm.
All that we ask, though, is that you maintain the basic rules of the server. Everyone is welcome. Invite your friends. I keep telling people, look, you're all really cool, and we'd like to have more people like you on the server. So invite your friends, invite widely. We want to have more discussion. It's becoming a nice looking place. It's becoming very handsome inside. So, but thank you everyone for watching. Again, I'm Imran.
I'm August.
Sure shot.
Richard.
And take care. See you next time.